454-2722. 454-2722.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the best talk radio in the nighttime from the great American Southwest to the rest of the nation. I'm Art Bell. This is called Coast to Coast AM. My guest is John Lear, and we're about to get back. Never has John said anything that's caused my ears to perk up. With that last call, I thought he was joking. John Lear building a time machine with Bob Lazar. Time machine, could it be done? Should it be done? I have long, all my life, been fascinated with the subject of time. There probably is no other more fascinating to me. And now I realize suddenly that he was serious. Once again, brace yourselves, everybody. Here we go. John Lear. Good morning, John. You there again?
Oh, how you doing, Art?
Oh, time machine. Really, John? Could it be done?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It could, yes. It has been done. I mean, I don't know whether we possess the technology to do it, but certainly someone has it.
Would you endeavor to do it?
It's interesting how it works. You could go forward, but then you'd have to come back. So I don't know whether, unless I could come back, whether I'd want to go forward in time.
All right. Good morning. On the first-time caller line, you're on the air Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell and John Lear.
Hi, this is Bob Lazar.
Oh, Bob Lazar. Hi. Bob Lazar, the son of a gun, am I glad that you called. And you called at an appropriate time, too. Time machine, Bob?
It's possible. John and I building one? No, not at all. At one time, John asked me if this was possible, and certainly it is. Time, space, and gravity are all essentially intertwined. That's why, in areas of extreme gravity flux, for instance, around a black hole, time moves very slowly.
Bob, let's pause for a second. I've never had you on the air before, and now that I do, I guess the audience should be introduced to you, so I'll let you do that. Who are you, Bob? And I've heard you are a physicist. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Boy, I didn't want to get into a whole big thing. I just kind of wanted to correct the...
I know, but it's my job to try and get you into a whole big thing. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a physicist. I worked out at Area S4 here in Nevada. I was exposed to some of the alien technology. Essentially, I think what John even mentioned before was my job was essentially to assist in the back engineering of the recovered crafts. I only worked on one of them, and my knowledge is only limited to the power source, more specifically the antimatter reactor, and the propulsion unit, more specifically the gravity amplifier.
How many of these discs did you actually see, your own eyes?
9.
9.
The only one I had physical contact with was 1.
Was 1. How long were you involved in trying to back engineer that technology?
A few months, not a very long time. Things didn't work out very well for a whole bunch of different reasons.
You ended up leaving, they ended up erasing you, is the short story.
That's correct.
I would ask you what I asked John earlier. Are you aware of any practical application of knowledge gained with that technology that you could point to today?
Actually, none at all, no.
So in other words, it's all being kept under wraps.
Well, really, a whole lot hasn't been learned. The technology has been in our hands, at least some of the crash recoveries, for as long as 40 years, but not a whole lot has been gleaned from that. We know how certain things operate, but in duplicating the manufacturing process, it really doesn't seem to be possible at this time. So there's very little.
Must be very, very frustrating for them. I'm going to ask you both to hold on just a moment. I'll come right back to you. I've got a very quick break to do. Stay right there. John Lear and Bob Lazar back in a through Friday night, Saturday morning. I'm Art Bell.
The slow
Back to the time thing for a second now, if we might. You're saying, A, it would be possible.
Well, it's not only possible, it happens quite often. I mean, this sounds really far out, but it's known scientific fact that the closer you are to a strong gravity force, the slower time moves. Time, gravity, and space are all intertwined like that. In fact, there was a famous experiment that was done. Two synchronized atomic clocks were placed side by side. They read the same time, and one was put at sea level, the other was put up at either in a plain or a high mountaintop. I don't recall which. And when they were brought back together, they both read different times. That was because of the change in gravity. One was further away from the source of gravity, being the Earth. Now, if you can artificially create a tremendous gravitational field, you can slow the effects of time down for the person that's in that distorted field. Now, the practical implications would be very difficult. First of all that would do would be slow down time for you. Everyone else essentially continues along the normal pace, so it appears that you move forward in time. As far as moving back, I haven't the slightest idea how you would do that, but it's certainly possible forward in time. In fact, the shuttle astronauts, or the astronauts that went to the moon, came back, I believe, 34 seconds younger than their counterparts here, just because of the gravity changes that they went through.
Wow. Isn't there a similar phenomenon associated theoretically with black holes, or the event horizon of black holes, Bob?
Just because that's, a tremendous gravitational field, and in fact, at the very event horizon of a black hole, time doesn't increment at all. For instance, if you walked over to that area near the event horizon, or somehow was able to survive it, spent a second there, you could come back to Earth, and 1 billion years could have elapsed. The time reference is completely changed. So the whole key is distorting gravity, creating a strong gravitational field, which, in fact, is how these crafts they have at S4 are powered. And
they bend or jump through bends in space, or create bends in space. How would you explain that, Bob?
Well, they essentially create them. They're using a device to artificially create gravity. This device, in turn, part of its nature, gravity distorts time and space. It bends space. It bends time. And this is how they travel. The discussion I got into, John, was, well, gee, is it possible to build something like that? Well, yeah, if you did have an antimatter reactor, a gravity amplifier, somehow it could contain the field so it wouldn't crush the occupant. And
yeah, I guess I know where there's a gravity amplifier, just not too many miles from here, huh?
Right, getting it's the problem.
So if you could put your hands on something like that, that might be then one practical application of the alien technology.
Well, is it that practical, though?
Well, that's a good question.
Something like that, and could turn it on, sit in a chair, and there's really, I don't see any way of going back, but theoretically there should be.
I did ask John this, and let me try it on you. He couldn't answer it, said I ought to ask you. If you could, first of all, could a biological entity pass through a black hole without being disrupted or something? And if so, what would be on the other side, Bob?
I don't know, and I don't believe anyone does know. There just isn't enough information about black holes to come up with that answer. As a guess, you look at it from a physical standpoint, the gravitational tidal forces entering the black hole should absolutely obliterate anything that even comes near it. But, stranger things have happened, and maybe not. So really, who knows?
How much technology are you missing, aside from the gravity amplifier, the ability to make a time machine, or in fact something that would cause you to travel through time? Are we missing a lot of other technology, or given the gravity amp, could you go from there?
Well, you really don't even have to do that. Another way is, just accelerating close to the speed of light slows time also. That doesn't take any technology, so it's probably not the safest thing to do.
What would theoretically occur to somebody who either came to... Is it possible, Bob, to exceed the speed of light in the physical universe without bending, warping space to do it?
No, it's not.
No, it's not. As you got near the speed of light, what would occur in all likelihood to a biological entity?
All kinds of things. First of all, it would Now, because of several things that occur, one of them being is mass increase. As you approach the speed of light, you begin to increase in mass, and therefore it requires more energy to propel you further, or faster, rather. You kind of get stuck in a little loop there.
So then great distances really are never going to be traveled that way.
No, they can't be. That just isn't practical. On top of that, you can go on for a long time about that. It's not practical. It really isn't.
Okay. I guess you left the project with the discs at one point. You do our audience a great favor by describing in as much detail as you're able to what it is you saw and worked on, Bob.
I worked on one particular craft that I called the sport model because of its very sleek appearance. Specifically, like I mentioned before, there was a small reactor that was removed from the craft, and we essentially back-engineered it. What we needed to do was find out not only how it worked, but also very important to the project was to see if this technology could be duplicated. One of the main problems in any kind of aircraft is power, and with a tremendous amount of power, you can basically do anything. And here's a reactor that operates, many times more efficiently than a fission reactor, or more efficiently than a fusion reactor, which we haven't even developed yet, ever could. And it supplies a tremendous amount of power, and this is essentially where we decided to start from, was to work from here and then go on. But in all the time that they had this and the time that I spent there, the short time that I spent there, really there's just not a lot you can do. We just don't have the materials to duplicate it.
Any ideas what this craft was made of? What kind of metal or substance it was?
I say it's metal just because I felt it. It felt cold. It had the appearance of metal. The grain structure appeared to be metal, but I don't know. Like I'm sure John has mentioned, the information is very compartmentalized. And
could you describe the interior of the craft? Were you inside?
The interior was very bare. There had been some equipment removed from it. There was a reactor. There were 2 seats. There were 2 consoles left, one large console. I call them a console. There was nothing on top. One of them was removed. I believe they're part of the gravity amplifiers that are connected directly underneath. They're in a triad formation.
These are going to be some silly questions, Bob, but were there windows? I mean, by what manner could you see or understand any of the technology that was in front of you, normal buttons, switches, gauges, or...
Really wasn't anything like that. Buttons and switches. It really wasn't even wiring. I know that sounds really bizarre, but it really isn't that that strange. A lot of the equipment, it almost appeared to be something similar to a Tesla coil. The way so every time I hit on a topic, I have to regress. And
sure, I understand
what I'm talking about. But it almost seemed like every piece of equipment was tuned to whatever it was supposed to be receiving signals from, and it was essentially electrical power transmission without wires, which is not something far out. That was something a man named Tesla accomplished in the 30s. However, this seemed to be along the same lines, but much more advanced.
Well, while we're on this subject, do you think mankind will ever manage to bring power from space to Earth through some method or another? It's the same sort of technology, I presume.
I don't know. That's about the best I can say about that.
Okay. Well, anyway, back to these. What was it like when you went in the room? I mean, I can only imagine they would lead you in, these guys with their little badges and so forth, and they would lead you into the area you were going to be working on these things, and you must have looked at them and said, "You've got to be kidding."
Well, it wasn't. I only got to physically view the craft twice. Once was when I went inside to see the placement of the parts that I was to be concentrating on. The other one was in a short flight test.
A flight test.
I wasn't inside. I saw it from inside the hangar.
And what did you see?
Just lifted off the ground, almost silently. It had a slight hissing sound to it, then drifted. It was quite amazing. I mean, I speak of it nonchalantly right now, but it's, there again, this was several years ago.
Wow. Again, back for a second to magnetism, large magnetic fields have indeed done strange things. Do you recall anything of the story, the Philadelphia experiment?
I've heard a lot about it.
And I want to run things. This is an unusual opportunity, Bob, so I want to run something by you. I had a friend, somebody I regarded as truly honest and extremely credible, and he told me about an experiment that he participated in Arizona, in which a very extremely large electromagnetic field was created, and he claims that that he saw something disappear. I mean, flat, completely, poof, disappear when exposed to this field. Is such a thing possible?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question. Is it possible for something to disappear when exposed to a large electromagnetic field? Yes. Do I think that happened during the Philadelphia experiment? No. Do I think that mankind right now is capable of doing that? No. There isn't sufficient power generated in the entire output of the planet at this time to create a field of that distortion.
Wow. Would the power plants inside these disks be capable of that kind of generation?
Yes.
Yes. What was the fuel of these craft, Bob? There had to be there's some sort of fuel, energy burned, expended, used, right?
Yeah. The fuel was, well, let me digress for a moment here, that there are three types of nuclear reactions. One's the fission reaction, which everyone's familiar with. That's essentially how atomic bombs work. It's a splitting of atoms and causing a chain reaction. It releases X amount of energy. Another more efficient reaction is a fusion reaction, which releases a little more energy. Both of these, for instance, when put in bombs, whether they're thermonuclear, the hydrogen bomb, or the fission bomb, an atomic bomb, they use about 9/10 of 1% of that fuel gets converted into the actual explosive energy. Now, if you really think about that, when you're dealing with a plutonium bomb, for instance, you're dealing with, somewhere on the order of about 8 pounds of plutonium, which is about the size, a little bigger than a golf ball. Now, 8/10 of 1% of that makes that giant explosion that you see. All the other material is wasted. That's how efficient that explosion is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, an annihilation reaction, which is a conversion, the direct conversion of matter to energy, is 100% efficient all the time. And you can see if that were put into a bomb. I made a tape explaining this, so I didn't have to.
So you didn't have to explain it all the time to people like me.
Right.
I
didn't get stuck on the radio.
All right. As long as we're in the categories of fusion, I want to ask one more question in that category, and it has to do with cold fusion. A number of people, even some very recent claims of the creation of cold fusion. Is it going to be possible, Bob, do you think, eventually to have a cold fusion process?
Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely not. I'll make a bet on it right now. Absolutely not.
So what was it that these
scientists... about a power source.
What was it that these scientists came up with that caused the bubbling and the heating and the apparent creation of energy? Any idea what it was?
I'm sticking with Los Alamos' explanation. Was essentially an electrochemical reaction that took place. Did fusion occur? No. There was far, far too many experiments done that supposedly duplicate experiments, and these yielded no results at all. And the physics behind it don't make any sense either.
All right. Again, going back to the disks, the fuel they use apparently is element something or another that goes beyond our table of elements. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's element 115. It's not an absolute definite, but that's what it appears to be.
Element 115.
114. Chances are it's 115. And interestingly enough, it's a stable element, and those familiar with the way the periodic table works, the way elements go, as they get higher and higher on the periodic chart, they become less and less stable and begin to decay. But this is a stable element. And again, this isn't something that's a total surprise. I mean, we've known all the way since the 50s and probably the 60s, that somewhere there's a magic combination of protons and neutrons that, again, somewhere in the higher elements will make a stable element. And apparently that does happen up at that level.
Have you had your hands on any 115, Bob?
I have had my hands very close to it.
Is there any 115 that exists outside of S4 now? You don't have to answer all of these, Bob.
Who knows?
That's a good answer. Let me, since I've got the two of you on the line, what would you say is your greatest area of agreement, the two of you?
That we live in Las Vegas.
Well, that makes the next one then very easy.
He was going to say that I'm nuts.
No, I'm just kidding around. John has I essentially have cut off whatever I haven't had contact with. So there can be talks of reptilian-like aliens or abductions and things like that. And I know there's lots of evidence that people were abducted, and I did see the thing on Fox the other day with the guy that got burns on him, and that's all interesting. But it's something strange that happens to you once you've been actually involved with something. You kind of put blinders on to the rest of the world, and now you only want to deal with something that you physically had hands-on experience with.
Oh, very much like what I said earlier, and you've had hands on one of these discs. Have you ever seen...
Now I'm kind of taking the attitude some people take towards me, but I'm not doing it on purpose. If I actually get abducted, then I'll start believing that. And that's,
but I'm curious.
That way, but that's just the way I think.
Well, yeah, but Bob, why, having had your hands on a disc, are you not easily able to make the leap to the grays or the blacks or any of the other 80 supposed varieties of aliens in terms of accepting their existence?
Well, I'm sure there are other civilizations all over the place. I don't know. I haven't seen evidence of other civilizations, I guess.
Are you absolutely convinced that those discs and that technology did not come from or originate here on Earth?
Oh, beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Well, unless they were robots, somebody brought them here then.
Oh, certainly. Some form of other creature had to have brought them here. There's no doubt about that. I just don't know if there are 100 different civilizations visiting Earth. I don't know if 100 other civilizations could find it. It's possible. I just shy away from that.
All right, this sounds then like an area of disagreement between the two of you.
I really can't take a stance on it because I don't know. This is just a personal feeling.
You sort of are cautious, though, in commenting in that area.
Sure.
What would you two say is the biggest disagreement you have regarding all of this? Would that be it, or is there some other area?
I don't know. You'd have to ask John.
How about it, John?
I don't think we have... I can't think of a real disagreement.
So no real disagreements. All right, gentlemen, I'm going to do my best to hold on to you for a while here if I can, Bob, and maybe even take a few calls. You up for that kind of thing? Are you up, or are you ready to go sleep?
Sleep is kind of on my priority list here.
Is it? Can you give me a few more minutes?
Sure.
All right, very good. Then both of you stand by. What a distinct pleasure. Bob Lazar and John Lear, both here, both together again. I guess they are frequently. And we'll get them back on the air together here in a moment on the CBC and BRN radio network. I'm Art Bell, and I will tell you later how to get copies, tape copies of this program, because I know there's a lot of people having conniption fits now, wanting one. We'll be back in a moment. Good morning again from the great American Southwest. I'm Art Bell, and Bob Lazar and John Lear are both with me at the moment. Back to them we go. Gentlemen, you're on the air once again.
How you doing, Art?
Good morning. Bob, while we've still got you, after you've gone through all this disaster that's been what? How long has this been going on now, Bob? For a couple of years now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you want to say to everybody having gone through all this? I mean, would you do it again? Would you go public again? Or would you say, boy, I'd no more open my mouth than the man in the moon?
I don't know.
Tony, I didn't know that it was just us in here. Do you want to come up and speak? I guess, we can talk. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't know everybody had left. Yo. Yeah, man, I don't know what happened. Tell you, man, I got dude, I'm getting doom switched. It's just the way it is.
You're getting what kind of switch? Doom switch?
Tony, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up? Yeah, we're just gonna take a little break. What's up?
it occurred to me while I was listening to that. I remember listening to it years ago, and I remember thinking, now I know why a lot of people don't like Bob Lazar. It's because he kind of sticks with the standard physics, right? When you kind of start getting off into the woo, he kind of resists it, and I think, and it just occurred to me that maybe that's why a lot of people don't like him, because most of the physics he was talking about early were just standard, what, special relativity or whatever, that accepted physics.
Did you hear him say, dude, tell me that you heard him say in that interview just now? I can go back and play the quote again, but he said, quote unquote, I think it's maybe possibly the element 114 or maybe even 115. I think it may be 115. I'm not sure. Did you hear him say that? Like he wasn't even sure that it was element 115 in this interview. This was through what, 3 years after he supposedly left. I'm telling you, it's like, oh, dude. Like, how is he unsure of what the fuel source
Yeah,
was?
I'm
Right?
not saying everything he's saying is correct. It just occurred to me why, now hearing all these other people talk about hating him, it reminds I just realized why, maybe, that he doesn't go for the Manhattan Project style. He talked about how cold fusion was, probably not going to happen, and all the stuff, faster than light travel is out, going to the past is
Do you
out.
believe Bob Lazar's story, Tony? Hold
What?
on. Do you believe Bob Lazar's story? Do you believe that he's being like? Do you believe he's telling the truth that he worked at Area 51 reverse engineering craft?
I don't know. For some reason, I've always kind of liked Bob. I can't explain it, and I think it's because he's never gone into he's always stuck with kind of standard. He had the opportunity to go like you know, the what would it be, the kind of wacky route on physics, but he stuck with sort of the standard model, which I always appreciated. I guess that's probably why I like him. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. I
I'm
called
sorry.
United Nuclear one time, and he actually answered the phone, and I ordered a signed copy of the sport model. I still have it.
I thought he did that for free. Hold on. So you paid that? Like you paid for that? The poster?
Paid.
I thought you said that he did it for free.
I think I had to pay for postage or something. He passed me along to his assistant or whatever after I talked to him for a minute, and then I can't remember if I paid postage but it shipped in a tube. It was very, it's I think, yeah, I don't mind paying for a sign. I mean, I paid for a signed copy of Lou's book. I think that was like $5 or $7 more. I don't mind paying for that kind of stuff. You don't have to buy it.
Yeah, well, I know. Well, let me tell you what I think about Bob Lazar. All right. Give me a second to pull up. Hold on. All right. So, no, seriously. And hear me out. All right. This is like my own original theory. As far as I know, nobody else has like brought this up before. All right. There's this man. All right. This takes about 4 minutes for me to stumble through it, and not like half-ass describe it. Can you hit your mic, Tony? So, can you close it up real quick? All right. So, this is my theory. I'm as far as I know, this is like, an original theory, guys. So, I don't have too many of these. I kind of stumbled into this one. So there's this guy, or there was this man named Harry Bob Fecter. Bob was his nickname, Harry Fecter. All right, Harry Fecter was a legendary scientist, born in 1921. All right, died in 2003. Lived in Vegas from 1967 until his death. All right, he had a degree in physics, a PhD in physics, a degree in electrical engineering from Stanford, went and did radar training at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. All right. Worked as a physicist at Los Alamos Laboratories in a supervisory role. He pioneered metal fuel cell technology that could possibly one day be used to fuel automobiles using aluminum. He worked on reverse engineering Nazi technology that was captured from the Panamunda, the Warner von Braun site, such as like infrared, of course, the V2, the missile, lots of like weapons technology. He did that. He was a reverse engineering government scientist. All right. He worked on classified projects doing that at Utah, which is now it's a defunct or a closed down air base, but I forgot the name of it. But in the 40s, in the 60s, that's what he was doing. Worked with the brother of Robert Oppenheimer. All right. He worked for Boeing on the early precursors to surface-to-air missiles. At that time, they called them ground-to-air pilotless aircraft, surface-to-air missiles. The guy created the electrical control system for at the time, it was the biggest particle accelerator in the United States. All right. This was during like the 60s, late 60s, outside of Chicago. This guy literally created, like, I say from scratch, but he designed it. All right. This guy, Harry Bob Fecter. Well, guess who Harry Bob Fecter also is, besides being, and he founded the physics department at where? UNLV. Literally started the physics department at the university right there. All right. The guy is a fucking legend. He was friends with von Braun, friends with Oppenheimer. The guy is a literal fucking legend. He also he was a part of a 3-man team that discovered 2 new subatomic particles. I don't know what that means, but it fucking discovers some. I mean, it's not some shit that I do going to check my mail each day. It's not. I mean, you discovered 2 subatomic particles. The guy worked with a Nobel laureate, doing like a paper on something that I don't understand. The guy was a literal legend. You could not have had a more legendary career as a scientist in what was kind of like a scientific renaissance. Well, guess who this guy Harry Fecter also was? Guess who? He was a close friend of George Knapp and his father-in-law. This guy Harry Bob Fecter was his motherfucking father-in-law. Yeah, George Knapp is married to this guy's daughter, and had been friends with George Knapp, and this guy had been friends since the 80s.
So you think he just adopted him?
What's up? I mean,
you think he adopted his?
Give me your analysis, Tony.
Well, I mean, you can learn things from other people, right? I'm not going to defend Bob. I don't know why I like him. I just think, I don't know, he's one of those guys. But here's the thing, okay? I can like somebody and not believe everything, right? I like a lot of people like that I don't, right? And
yeah, man. I mean, dude, I like him too. I mean, he likes fast cars, he likes cocaine, and he likes loose women. Like, I mean, like what is in Vegas, like, what is not to like? Yeah, I mean, the guy, but like when it comes to, we're analyzing his story right now, not his character, which is highly questionable, but also appealing at the same time.
What about all the other? I mean, is he any different than all the other people who make similar claims?
Let's focus on Bob Lazar right now. You don't need to branch out. You're gonna get us in trouble, man. We're gonna, I'm saying, like, well, you got to branch it out and just like, all right, we're just like focusing on Bob Lazar right now, But how do you, dude? Like, okay, let's say, like, besides the fact that literally this guy's Harry Bob Fecter, who, besides the fact that literally Bob Lazar's story parallels Dr. Fecter's story in almost every way. Okay, swap out Nazi technology with UFOs, and you've got literally the same fucking story, plus or minus a couple of decades, sliding the timeline. It's literally the same fucking story. Like, it's insane. Like, sure, like the serendipity, like, oh, his name's Bob. He, like, that shit doesn't matter. Of course, that's just kind of in my infographic. I threw it in there, and the stuff with like the jet car, and like, oh, well, he developed like a, something that can use aluminum, to fuel a car. It's like, that's just kind of serendipitous. But everything else is like legit. Like, what the fuck? So the question is, I mean, if there's something to this, which I don't see how there's not, because let's say that it's not like a proxy type of storytelling that is going on. And that would be a way to justify it too. Think about it. If you're Bob Lazar's wife, or one of his wives that he's had over the years, he's had many. The guy gets around, but how does George Knapp, like, how do they tell their families, like, how do they justify it to the people close to them that they're lying about this? Well, hey, it's Dr. Bob's story, right? It's my father-in-law's story that needs to be told because it's an important story, because this guy's a fucking hero. But Dr. Bob is, he's, my father-in-law is almost 80. Like, he doesn't want to deal with this shit right now, the media hoopla. So we're just going to tell a story by proxy. That's what journalists do, right? Journalists, they tell stories for a living. Well, right. So tell a story by proxy. But hey, let's say that didn't happen. How the fuck does George Knapp not have his legendary physicist father-in-law vet his fucking UFO fucking whistleblower, right? Like, how does that not happen? How do you not have your legend, the guy who literally has done everything that Bob Lazar is claiming? How do you not have him vetted by your fucking father-in-law? I'm telling you, dude, dude, it's like, this is, I mean, like, this is it, man. Like, this. I mean, it's, I hate to use the word debunk, but this is like the ultimate debunk for Bob. Like, do you see what I'm saying, Tony? I mean, rebuttal, please. Tony, are you in shock because of my genius?
Oh,
All
shoot.
right. I know, man. It tends to happen
I thought I hit
on occasion.
the button.
Oh, it's okay. I'm sure you passed out. You fainted because you were like, oh, it's so smart.
My,
Oh, God, I'm so privileged to know him. Oh.
my hero's been busted. I don't know. I mean,
no, but seriously, how do you rationalize that, Tony?
Harry Bob was well known, right? I mean, you just go stealing stories from people and expect nobody to find out, right? You don't think I mean, I wouldn't be brave enough to do that if I was Bob. And I think back then, you got to remember that George was more legitimate. I don't know. I thought he was. I'm from that. I remember that era.
He was 2 years into his. No, he was less than 2 years into his career as a journalist. And this Bob Lazar story is literally what broke. It's like the John Lear, all right, story that, like, in the same type of way, it's like Knapp says, quote, he claims that John Lear, just walked into the office one day at KLAT, whatever the fuck, KLAS, just walked in, and like that Knapp overheard John Lear trying to sell his UFO stories to another reporter, one that was already established, and that this other reporter just wasn't having anything to do with it. And so then John Lear, so then John Lear was like about to leave because, he got turned down for going on the news with like, the big name reporter, and Knapp's scooped him up and then did that, what was like a 30-minute interview. Well, this Bob Lazar story is what literally made George Knapp who he is today, and it's.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah, dude, how do you rationalize that though, man? There's just no way, dude. There's no way that you don't have your fucking father-in-law physicist legend. One of the probably the most.
I don't think both of them were in on taking the story, right? If Bob knew about it, maybe he fed it to George, and maybe vice versa. I don't know. I can't see. I don't know. It just seems like.
What? You mean the other way around?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems. Well, no, Bob
father-in-law was aware. Dude, the father-in-law
Bob would have known about Bob Vector before George Knapp, right?
What?
Bob?
We don't know that.
Bob, well, he was more into the physics.
He was like a mean face. We can't hear you. It sounds like you're in a I don't know, like in the ocean or something. Mean face. You want to try again?
I'm just saying Bob could have gone. He could have gone more full grift than he did. He could have been out there like talking about anti-gravity devices, that you could sell on eBay, or whatever. You know what I mean? He didn't go full. I don't know. He stuck.
Dude, I've been sitting here like yelling into my mic, and I had it muted the entire time for the past like 5 minutes or the past like minute and a half. No, dude, like how could he have gone more how could he have not gone? Like, damn it, how could he have gone more full grip? Like, dude, he came out with a fucking VHS tape that he sold for $29.99, and that he sold literally tens of thousands of copies that him and Gene Huff made. That fucking VHS tape where he drives up in his, dude, the guy, are you kidding me? Like, how could he have gone less full grip?
I mean, on the physics side, he did a bunch of interviews. He's not talking about 20 and back and all this stuff. That's what I mean on the story side of it.
Yeah, he's not a fucking idiot. Yeah. That's what I'm saying, dude. It's like story proximity, all right? He's telling, hey, and in the same way, all right, think about it this way. Think about how people like Elizondo, people like even this guy that came into Spaces the other day, 20-something Tactical. He's this guy who like wrote a book called Orbits. He's coming around to Spaces. He's an actual legit like ex, government special sniper. Like the guy is a legit, he is like he's ex task force, so like HSI, doing like security operations surrounding like Super Bowls. The guy's legit, but the story that he wanted to tell, Dopser wouldn't approve it. Like the DOD Dopser, he got turned down. They were like, you can't write about this, because he wanted to write about an operation, okay, that he did during his career, one of his like legendary operations that he was a part of. Dopser said, fuck no, you can't write about that. Like, and it was 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when this operation happened, a security operation, not even related to UFOs. Okay, so what did this guy do? Because Dopser turned him down when he submitted his, first draft request of his novel. They were like, you can't talk about any of this. Dopser shot him down. What did he do? He just fucking took away like the the legitimate details of his story and replaced it with with what? UFOs. That's literally what he did, and they approved it because it's fiction now, because it's a work of fiction. Like think about what that means, dude. Think about what that means. Like it's the same mentality of like taking a legitimate story, like Dr. Bob Fector being a legitimate Nazi reverse engineering physicist for the government. All right, working on the most classified of projects. All right, you can't talk about that shit, right? There's no way that it's like there's stuff that was even classified 30 years later that Dr. Bob Fector probably couldn't talk about because he worked on the cutting edge of technology post World War II. All right, so he can't talk about that, but it's such a legendary story, and you've got you have your daughter's boyfriend, that you maybe even fiance at that time, because I know they were engaged. Knapp and his wife were engaged for almost 15 years apparently. So like they could have been engaged at that time. Anyways, the point is like, well, you got your up and coming reporter, son-in-law. I mean, dude, it's just it smells, man. Like, do you see what I'm saying, Tony? Like, I know I'm not making
No, I see. No, I mean, I see what you're
like
saying.
ludicrous sense out of
No,
this.
I mean, I've always been.
And so you replace like UFOs in with like, okay, so you take out the Nazi reverse engineering tech, some of which may have been still classified at that time, especially some of the infrared stuff, which is what the majority of what they were like trying to reverse engineer was like IR technology. And you replace it, oh, well, he was reverse engineering UFOs. And then you have Bob Lazar tell the story, very, very poorly. And not, I mean, but like it's the same dude, like even the particle accelerator shit, like, it's too, I mean, look at it's like, dude, it's just too similar, man. There's just no way to, there's no other excuse, and there's an interview. Okay. So go to Google and been Mystery Wire, which is George Knapp's personal blog. That's also George Knapp's personal YouTube channel is Mystery Wire. He's got videos going back 30 years. It's it's a hidden gem. All right, that's George Knapp's personal brand, Mystery Wire. And he's got an interview on his YouTube with his brother or with his father-in-law, Dr. Bob, from 2001 when he was 2 years before his death. All right, 2 years before this guy died. And this guy, Dr. Bob, when he was 81 at the time, was sharper than me or you or any, like this guy was like as sharp as he was, the day that he, became a physicist. Like, the guy's just like so this guy would have been aware of what's going on. I'm telling you, there's no other explanation, man.
It's hard to filter out because if you're like me and you think that there's possibility of life out there somewhere or other civil, because Earth is a latecomer, right? It's hard to decide what you believe and what you don't, right? Because and with all of these rumors, did you hear in the last one of the last podcasts with Lou Elizondo? He actually, I don't know if it was a slip, but he literally said that we have craft that are capable of the five observable. Did you see that? Which I mean, and so it's almost like what's the real story? What are we supposed to believe?
Hey, Craft Beer, do you have that clip that you can send me over real quick so I can play it?
I am currently on my phone charging in my car because we still have no power, so I can't. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, that's right. That's right. Oh, okay. So you're driving around just like charging phones. Oh, damn. My
Yeah.
bad. All right. Let me look it up. Hey, so do you have any opinions on like on my victory over, Artisan Tony? I mean, you can just tell me that I'm great, or whatever. I describe how amazing I
I
am.
didn't know we
you know.
were fighting. I didn't know we were battling.
No, it was more like it wasn't a battle, more like a blitzkrieg. I'm just
Tony,
joking,
I
dude. Like
don't.
of course, I'm
Tony,
just joking.
something you said, Tony, about Lazar. You said people don't like him because he sticks to the standard physics. I don't think that's even in the top 5 reasons people don't like Bob Lazar.
I said it just occurred to me. It doesn't mean it's correct. It's just something that I thought of listening to that interview or that coast to coast story. it just occurred to me that that may be one reason, because most people in the UFO community want to believe in all the physics, right? Past, traveling to the past, which is physically impossible. All of this stuff. They want to believe in that. And when someone comes along and says that's not possible based on the standard model, then they just don't like them anymore. That's just I've witnessed that.
Yeah, and at least I mean he's being responsible enough to say, I don't know how such a thing could be possible. That's the responsible thing
It's
to
like his
say.
skepticism with cold fusion too. Look at the ITER project. We've spent billions of dollars on, and we still can't get a con- you know a reaction that lasts more than what, nanoseconds.
Sorry, I'm only half able to respond because driving in a town with where all the stoplights
But that
are not
interview was
working is not
before
Do you
easy.
remember?
that interview was before
Do you remember the times?
the ITER project.
Yeah, 47 Grider.
You know what I mean? He made that prediction before that the facility was built.
Wait, hold on. What, Tony?
If you're not,
You made what prediction about what?
the ITER project in Europe, it's the cold fusion. They spent billions of dollars on this thing. They still can't get a sustained reaction in more than, I don't know, a nanosecond, right? Well, they've been working on this
What
thing
does this have to do with Bob Lazar?
because in that interview he expressed skepticism about cold fusion, and and this was before that project. It was what I'm
Oh
saying.
yeah.
I'm saying he that people right now, people want to claim that we have cold fusion reactors or whatever in space, but I'm just saying that that's what it goes back to. What I'm saying is that when you hear somebody talk about something that you like or you dream about, automatically just like the guy.
Here's the thing. Like, I'm a fan of Bob Lazar, Tony. I like Bob. I even like his story. All right, even though it's not his, I mean, like, I would hang out with Bob Lazar. Like, I would love to go back to 1985 and like, get picked up by Bob Lazar and go to fucking the strip club with him and Knapp, and I'm sure it would have been a great time. You know what I'm saying? But it's not really his story.
Well, we don't really know what the truth is, right?
I
Where
mean,
was he?
how do
Where
you
was
explain?
he?
Like, how do you?
Where was he working when he was claiming to work at Area 51?
Uh, as far as I know, he was not working. Yeah, like
Oh, a smart
I
guy like
think
that's
that.
got to be
Well,
working
he
somewhere.
was. I mean, he was working on setting up a brothel. I know that much. Right around that time, the same time that he claimed to be working at Area 51. No, seriously, think about it. Like, I think personally, this is going to be really strong, and this is definitely going to. This is a recorded space too, so I'm definitely never going to hang out with Bob Lazar. By the way, my name is. Oh fuck, I don't even. No, never mind. Yeah. This is like gonna seal my fate. Me and Bob Lazar never gonna shoot fireworks off in the desert, and yeah, it's just okay. But I think it was a cover story for him cheating on his wife. Like I think he was out like in his brothel, just like drowning in women. Yeah, like that's what I think he was out doing because he would like be gone like at night, like overnights, and I just think he was out cheating on his wife, and I think
You could have
yeah,
come up with
that's
a
what I think.
a more believable story, a cover story, if you were going to tell a lie to your wife, right? Most women are more skeptical than men. I think so. Most of them.
I don't know, Tony. I never lied to my wife, so I don't know. Well,
I
I
think you
did when I
could
told her that one
you
time,
could
she.
have. We're talking hypothetically. I never claimed
I
that. I
mean,
never had a
I don't know.
brothel. I should have probably had one. Probably would have made more money.
Yeah, yeah, dude. That's what we should do, man. We should set up one up there in the mountains. Got plenty of places to build a little cabin, little brothel in the hills. Huh? Yeah, me and you.
Next to the
What do you
moonshine
say?
still.
Yeah, that'd be great, man. Dude, we'll talk about that later. Uh, I just he was not employed as far as I know. Like, he had apparently been a part of like the business side of prostitution for a long time. He claims, all right, this is one of his claims that like there's no proof for, but he claimed that he and his wife, who he got divorced with during the you know, Area 51 like fallout, during like like right around that time when he claimed to get fired from Area 51 is when he and his wife were, decided to go through a divorce. The whole thing, how he got, a phone call and stuff, or like a phone tap, recording, and heard that his wife, was cheating with her flight instructor, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think probably he had the fucking phones tapped. I think he set the phone tap up himself. I don't buy any of it, and who knows why. there were people like the whole shots fired. Dude, I just think it's all bullshit. I think it's all bullshit. I think it's him trying to cover his ass. And then I think with George Knapp, who knows? Or you know what? Or maybe he did work at Area 51. You know, that's a possibility. All right. Maybe it wasn't Edward Teller who gave him a recommendation. Maybe it was Dr. Bob Fechter who gave him the recommendation to, right? Like, you know, that makes a little bit more sense than like a random chance meeting with Edward Teller outside of a fucking auditorium in Los Alamos, you know, right? That makes a lot more sense to have your friend's brother or to have your friend's father, legendary physicist, hook you up with like, you know, a job, right? Right? That makes a lot more sense, you know? And maybe Bob did what Bob claims to have done, which is fucking went and blabbed, literally fucked the job up by like breaking his security oath before he even got his clearance, you know, put into, you know, like, you know, put out of probation. So like he went and he, you know, like maybe they did show him a bunch of kind of like barium mill tests. And a barium test is where basically they feed you bullshit and they see what comes out the other side. They see if you pass on that bullshit information to anybody else. If you do, then they know, well, hell, if they can't trust you to not blab about like the fake flying saucer that they showed you, they sure as fuck can't trust you with the particle accelerator, you know, work that like you're about to be hired to do, right? Right? It's called a barium mill test. Look it up. It's big in intelligence, big in like corporate espionage, you know, stuff like that. Yeah, just like, you know,
Sounds
feed
like
it, like feed some bullshit down the pipe, see what comes out.
sounds like an
Well,
element on the
and
Or
Bob
reality
he's
fell.
state.
lying.
So
Barium.
and
I
so
mean, that's
Bob,
possible, Grider, but I guess my question, Grider, is even if people spend out so much time trying to determine whether or not he actually worked where he says he did, but even if we could prove that he had worked in Area 51, that still lends zero evidence to the actual claims that he has made about what he
Let me
experienced there. So it's always been
we
kind of
know
like
the
a
claims are
pointless
bullshit,
debate.
dude. Like
let me
we're not
ask you.
worried about
Let
the
me
claims are bullshit. Yeah.
let me ask something about that. You know, you've seen the films of the hovercraft that look like, you know, a saucer in the 50s. Remember that? You've seen those
The
films.
Avro car.
Yeah.
So, what do you think they had? What is this, the 90s? What do you think they were experimenting with if Bob was there?
But that's a completely different type of propulsion that you're talking
No,
about. Like
I know. I'm saying
that's not the sequitur you think
you're
it is.
talking about 40 years different.
One at a time. Hey, Tony. Hey, guys. One at a time. I know I've been bad about it too. You know, talking over. Let's just have one at a time. UFO meme face speak and you know say what you want to say, and then Tony wait for him to be finished and then respond. All right. You know, like don't be in a hurry to talk over each other, please.
I'm just saying, like the lenticular shape for aircraft has been around, at least a concept, since the 30s. Like what you're talking about is two completely different types of propulsion that are like just eons apart. I don't think that just because they had the Avro car in the 50 and they were experimenting with this type of crap, that they had someone like Bob Lazar working on something like Element 115 in the 90s. Also, like, why can't anyone confirm any part of the history that Bob Lazar talks about in terms of like his school? Like, what was the guy's name? Bill Dexter or something like that? He's like, yeah, that guy remembers me at Caltech. Stanton Freeman looked him up, found him, to find out that that guy doesn't even work at Caltech, has no idea who Bob Lazar is. Like, why lie about such little things? And now we have to, we're supposed to believe him about, like, yeah, he was part of this, like, crazy reverse engineering program that they give him, you know, they give him the classification on a dime to basically work on this like super top secret stuff without like having any sort of background whatsoever. Like none of it makes any sense.
Hey, Meanface, can I ask you, out, out of all the liars and grifters in this kind of field, why do you think Bob Lazar has had so much staying power?
Because he comes out periodically. Like he times it very well. It's not like he's out there in the limelight all the time, and that kind of like adds to the lore behind him. Like you know, like he's not out there quote unquote grifting 24/7. He'll come back in the shadows, and then like you know, like the Jeremy Corbell documentary, quote unquote documentary on him comes out. He's thrust in the limelight again, and then he disappears. Like he knows how to play the game. He knows what he's doing.
Okay, so that's a good, yeah, that's a good part of it.
Yeah.
What do
So
you think
hey,
about his story is so appealing that it has constantly, appealed to so many people in the community? What is it about his
because it
story
was new.
specifically that?
Because it was new.
It was new.
No, I mean in terms of generally the fact that it has had so much appeal to people in the community over the
Well,
decades.
because on the surface, it is a very attractive story. I mean, it's not, if like people like me who do believe something like this is going on, like it's a very quote unquote relatable story to tell. Like, yeah, I was working on this, it's compartmentalized, etc, etc. It's like, it's just attractive. as long as it's not in your face all the time, because then you can start poking holes at him and his credibility. But like the idea of a reverse engineering program is not something that's new. It's not something that's, like groundbreaking. It's something that's pretty, that's gone back since the 60s and the 50s.
It's because Grush was coming out. I pointed this out like 1,000 times to you.
Are we doing hands?
All right, Tony, Zim, we're doing hands, all right? And Tony, you've had your hand up, so you can go on and yeah, floor is yours.
Thanks. Just wanted to mention to kind of push back against UFO. Mean said the year after I graduated high school in 1980, they rolled out the F-117 stealth fighter. Remember that? That was 40 years after, right? And then the 90s.
But that's still jet propulsion. I'm sorry, that's
Okay.
still jet propulsion.
Are
That's
we
not
jumping in,
anti-gravity.
okay, so I guess we're jumping in. I'm not talking about anti-gravity. I'm talking about the idea that there's no advance, that we haven't made steady advancements in technology over the years, and there might have been something at Area 51 that Bob saw. I mean, that the stealth fighter came out 10, 12 years before Bob was even working at Area 51. So what are they working on there now?
But
Nothing.
I don't understand your point. Like, I don't understand what you're trying to say. We're not talking, like, I'm not
I
contesting
think
the fact that they
it's
haven't
very
made any sort
clear
of
what I'm trying
aeronautical
to say.
advancements in the last 40
You,
years. I'm contesting the fact that this guy was reverse engineering a flying saucer.
you just people just keep ignoring this advancement in technology. I said something about a hovercraft in the 50s that looked like a saucer, and you said, "Oh, that's no comparison." I'm not comparing. The point is the advancements that we've made every decade, and so to say that there can't be some kind of advanced craft at Area 51 that someone worked on, whether it was Bob or not, is silly. Have you seen the DARPA article about the manta ray, the underwater?
We're not saying that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that at all.
We're saying that Bob Lazar did not work on advanced craft at Area 51. That's what we're saying, because that's what the evidence shows, Tony.
Well, yeah, I don't know what kind of. Yeah, I don't know.
Guys, is my mic too loud? Like, I feel like my mic may be too loud. I'm sorry.
So,
Wait,
Tony, I mean, is the
okay.
point that you think that the best explanation is he saw something and that explains his story? Whereas what we're
Yes.
saying is he probably didn't see shit to begin with. But you think the best explanation is he saw something that maybe he misinterpreted and that explains, where the stories are coming from. Is that what
The
you're saying?
truth is, the truth is, we don't know. It's like this idea that Lou Elizondo didn't work for it. We don't know that. We don't have a damn clue.
Can we keep it
or not.
keep it on topic? Keep it on
No, I'm
topic,
saying
please.
it's related. It's the same thing. We don't. Nobody in this community knows whether Bob worked at Area 51 or not. They just don't know. They don't know. We don't know, and we keep claiming, we keep acting like we know, and we don't.
Why would Bob lie about something like Bill Dexter? Well, let me find the guy's name. Yeah, Bill Duxler. He claims was a professor at Caltech who would know who he is. They tracked him down. Turns out he doesn't even work at Caltech. Has no idea who Bob Lazar is. Like, why lie about a detail like that? And we're supposed to expect to believe him about something else, like reverse engineering a flying saucer.
Here's the thing: nobody gets an advanced degree like above a bachelor's and is anonymous. All right, when you go and when you're getting a master's degree, when you have to write like a master's thesis, you're known to at least 10 people. At least 10 like other professors. At least 10 professors. Like you're something like you have a thesis manager. I forgot, that's not the proper term. Like
Advisor.
people know you in the university. Advisor. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. So it's just Zim. What's up?
Just want to point out, I used to talk about it a lot on ahead of Grush being presented. About 2 months before it, the Bob Lazar thing was boom, fresh and new. Everybody was talking about Lazar. And then when Grush came out, now what's introduced? What do we all accept? Is this what people are claiming? They're claiming crash retrievals are real, that there's this long history of them, that they are sourced for some. I saw that coming and kept bringing it up to the regulars. Why is everyone going back to Lazar right now? And most people say, well, we always talk about it. I said, no. It's been a year since anybody brought this up. But Knapp was responding to people, Another guy was digging, and it didn't seem legitimate to me. It seemed like it was concocted to bring that subject up again. So I think Kraft's the one who said, why does he keep coming back? It's because it's about crash retrieval. So either that's the big lie they want to spread to cover up their tech. That's the most reasonable thing to think, right? Or it's because there's crash retrievals, right? And it's not very unreasonable. There's got to be crash retrievals for satellites, et cetera, meteors, whatever. We've seen a lot of history of that. But does that mean it's alien?
Operation Moondust. Yeah.
Yep. But that's my point. Is I was just backing up. People said, "Why Lazar?" The fact that it's coming up. If we start seeing it coming from 12 different directions again, watch. All of a sudden, the hearing on
Zim,
November 13th
there's
will
no
be
conspiracy, dude. Zim, we're talking about Bob Lazar right now because of some research that I did. Okay, that's why. Like, I'm not trying to make this about me. I'm like, let's make it about the research that. Like, that's why there's no conspiracy, dude. Like, have you seen like the parallels between like George Knapp's father-in-law and Bob Lazar that like I put the infographic up in the nest or it's down in the nest, maybe in the purple pill. Like, have you seen that? Like,
I,
are you
I went
familiar with
the
that?
facts of it with you, and I agree, and it's stunning, and I think it points to George Knapp as an op. Period. It's pretty simple. All this other stuff. Well, maybe his friend got a job and did. Nah, dude. If it's your reporter that's working with a high up in that secret department, what's the dinner table conversation like if he's sitting saying, "Oh, it's aliens, it's aliens"? No, no, it's opposite. It's say it's aliens. Say it's aliens. Right?
Also, can I bring up
Well, I mean, they can't say.
sorry.
Yeah, man, go on, Memphis.
Yeah, I'll just say the idea that he had a piece of Element 115 as part of like his story. I think that was part of the documentary as well, where like they turned the cameras off when he showed it Jeremy Corbell. Like, do people not realize he would be a target of every foreign adversary intelligence organization on the planet if that was the case? I mean, Russian intelligence agents were going after UFO researchers in the 70s, 80s just for pointing out crap that they thought were UFOs, and like they were gleaming for little details about what it might be because they knew it was experimental craft, let alone having a piece of the element used to produce the anti-gravity properties. Like, are you fucking kidding me? His house would be raided by the KGB, by whatever intelligence organization out there in order to get their hands on it. That's just like, for me, that's like the craziest part of the story that people are going with. He would be an international target.
He would be even if he's lying. So he he is.
They scared of Bob Lazar.
Who is scared of Bob Lazar?
Just kidding. You guys are too serious.
Well, you said it with a serious tone.
I'm just saying. You think every intelligence source for every country knows what the hell's going on? That's why it's clouded. It's for those people to be clouded.
I'm just
Doesn't
joking.
mean they wouldn't head at maybe some Iranian
Zim, you
intel
cut out.
there.
Maybe do I need to recycle myself? Zim, are you still talking?
Yeah, Zim's talking.
All right, I'll recycle myself. Hold on.
I mean, that's true, Zim, but like when you're making a claim that you have the actual element in your backyard somewhere that produces anti-gravity properties for these flying saucers, like there's no way no intelligence organization on the planet wouldn't want a piece of that and wouldn't start scouting out your house and trying to find a way to steal it. Not only that, that would be such a gigantic national security risk. Because of that reason, there's no fucking way the US government would allow him to keep that in the first place, especially after making that admission. So, like, for me, that's where the entire story falls apart.
It falls apart, but they put that on Netflix and sent it to every country in the world. That's my point. Do you understand? It's an op. It's an op.
Why do you always think it's always top down? Like, it's bottom up explanations work just as well. There are dumb people like Jeremy Corbell who believe the story. He makes a documentary, and there you go. Why does it always have to be like government purposefully doing these things to throw other people off the scent?
Well, Kraft, but that's what they're doing.
Dinner table. He's sitting at the dinner table with a guy that does have all this. Okay, that's why. I'm talking about the reporter that drives this, the whole generation, right? So that's a big deal. Just like Lazar's connection to John Lear, and we see what everything he was into. It's a big deal. It is top down, Kraft. It's more sensible.
I don't think so.
Well, Kraft, UFOs have been used as psychological warfare, or at least planned or played with the idea of doing that since the 50s, since like they were trying to overthrow the Guatemalan government, I believe in 1952 or whatever that was. So there is a certain top-down element with some of this stuff, like that just can't be ignored. Especially if you look at the 80s, a lot of it came top-down and laid the foundation for a lot of stuff people believe today. So like, I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, there is a history of just intel fuckery where they do disseminate this kind of stuff, and then people end up, building on it decade after decade.
I agree with you, but that's why we need to look at every case like on a case by case basis. And I don't see any reason to believe this specific one is a top down one rather than just one really good liar who has managed to hoodwink an entire generation of UFO enthusiasts. And people continue to buy into his bullshit to this day. I don't see any evidence of top down shenanigans going on here.
It could have started off as a non-top down as a top down.
Did wasn't Doty working with the FBI when they supposedly went after his Element 115? Isn't he a historical disinformation operative? So remember the Element 115 story where the feds were going to raid him about it, and then it ended up being the claim was that it was something else he sold that could be used as dangerous items. But wasn't
he's the father of disinformation? Yeah, Doty is. Yeah, but the Element 115 stuff is such bullshit.
Ryder, you have Doty's service record. Does what Zim just say match what we see in his DD? What's the form name?
Craft beer in shambles.
Yeah, Doty's record is yeah, exactly. Yeah, no. I mean, the DD-214 is legit. Like Doty's a legit hero on paper. On paper, he is a fucking American hero. All right, his service was exemplary on paper. I know this is, please, I keep saying on paper because I know somebody's going to clip this shit out and it's going to be used against me. On paper, even his New Mexico State Police career on paper. But hey, guys, we're talking about Doty tomorrow. Like, there's a space me and UFO Meme Face are hosting. It's going to be the closeout space. We're going to talk all about Doty and disinformation. All right, let's stay focused on Bob Lazar, or even that era of stuff. Relating to Bob Lazar and Knapp. And I'm of the opinion that I agree with Craft Beard. I think this is the Lazar story is most likely, almost certainly, just the work of Knapp and Lazar and possibly the father-in-law, but not actively. But I don't think that this is I don't think it's a disinformation op. I think that that's a big stretch, and there's nothing that points towards it as far as like the evidence. There's no evidence for it, in my opinion.
You don't think it could have evolved into a top down?
I highly doubt it.
Tony, I think that kind of question is tricky because of course it could have, but what we're talking about is there evidence for that actually having happened? We can speculate all we want, but we're trying to stick with, does the evidence show that this is a top-down op?
Well, I mean, Bob seems to be pretty happy with his United Nuclear Company right now. He's not like, well, I guess he did kind of get back.
Except when he is having to go to court over, selling a chemical that was used like in a murder, right? I've got the court documents. Like I can post them up in the nest if I can get them made into a collage here in a second. But he's been in trouble. I mean, he sold it. Yes, he sold the chemical that was used. Yes, that was used in to poison somebody in a homicide. But he wasn't found guilty of anything, as far as I know. He wasn't charged for anything related to the homicide.
I mean, I don't.
I mean, Tony, what are you like? What are we even what? Yeah, you can kill somebody with anything, dude. But there's things there's chemicals in our country, in our world, that you're not allowed to sell because they're dangerous chemicals. All right, but it was a legal chemical that he was selling. It was a chemical that was used for not fireworks, which is what most of the stuff that he sells is. It's fireworks related. It was like one of his chemistry related kind of science fringe, kind of chemicals. I forgot what it was, but like I said, it was legal. But they did the raid on him because they wanted to find the log list to verify that this person that used it to kill somebody had bought it from him, and it was this big thing. But Bob's been in court multiple times. Bob was in court in 1991 or 1990, maybe 1990 or 1991 over the pandering, what became pandering, but it was really he was running a brothel, with with his mistress, with his madam. Bob has been in court other times. Let me find the court paperwork, but Bob's no saint, and he's definitely not an agent of the government. That's excuse me. I believe that he's more than likely not an agent of the government. I have to something to change my mind personally. I think it's highly unlikely that he's acting on behalf of the government because the guy's just a profiteer. Like he's just a greedy liar. That's all he is.
You don't know the name of the
And as
chemical?
to why he got big, George Knapp. I have the court documents literally in like a folder. Just let me finish. Hold on, and then I'll look. It'll take me a minute to find it.
I'm asking for a friend.
But because of George Knapp, George Knapp is the one. George Knapp 100% is the reason that Bob Lazar is as popular as he is, and got the national, nationwide, really worldwide, attention because of George Knapp. That's it. That's the only reason.
I just think it's possible that I don't know, it evolved into a situation where he agreed to, I don't know, stop. But what's this most recent thing he's been doing? Did he sort of get back into it? I haven't really followed him that much.
Yeah, dude, he did a documentary with Corbell recently, and he went on like the talk show circuit. He came out with a book through TTSA that I think was ghostwritten. I actually read the book and I liked it. I thought it was, fairly illuminating. As it kind of helped out the against Bob Lazar side. Like it was it was not compelling. It was not a compelling story, as in it was not compelling, it was not convincing. It made me think like even more that he's like lying about it. Just the way that the voice in the story, the voice that was speaking, the narration, it did not seem genuine. But then I found out that
doesn't it remind you
but then I found out that he had a ghostwriter. So like he had a ghostwriter. He didn't even write his autobiography that TTSA sold. So it's
remind you a little bit of how Eminent is, where I'm like, I've heard all this, so I get Lazar's book, I read it, and I feel like there's even less in the book than what they say in interviews. In both cases, in a way, Didn't that remind you of that? But that was my same impression as I went away from the book. It was like, yeah, it's a good book if I hadn't heard all the other interviews, but it was nothing new. And anytime you say, well, I'd like to listen to interviews, you'd like to hear something more nailed down, it just wasn't in there.
Yeah, and you can find a free copy to read of the Bob Lazar autobiography on archive.org. If you go to archive.org and search for Bob Lazar autobiography, it's a gray covered book. If you just filter by text, then you'll be able to find it. It's free to read. Same thing with Lou Elizondo's book. It's for free to read right now. There's a free copy, PDF copy that you can download. That's on archive.org. If you type in Lou Elizondo book, it'll come right up. So archive.org, it's a great resource.
In his book, does it repeat the claim that he still has the element 115 buried somewhere, or does it admit that?
I can't remember.
Hey, is there anyone that's
I can't remember.
pro Lazar in the audience? I would love to hear that side of the story too. I feel like it's a little one-sided at the moment.
I'm not necessarily pro Lazar. I'm just saying that no one in this community knows the full extent of the story. So
we don't have to. Like, absolute certainty isn't something you're going to get in many topics in life. I think the evidence shows fairly well a very good, likely explanation for what happened with this guy. You don't need to have foolproof certainty.
Well, I mean, the claims that he didn't work at Area 51, I mean, and I asked where was he working, and the answer was a brothel. Realistic to me. That seems as far out as necessarily Area 51.
But that's not
besides the fact that he got convicted. Hold on, no. Besides
when was he convicted?
God dang it, you're gonna make me mute you.
I'll mute you.
In 1990, he got convicted. Tony, don't make me mute you, dude. Like I don't want to mute you. I've like used the mute button once out of every space that I've held. Like I don't want to use it on you, man, for the first time. Second time, dude. He got convicted a year after he broke. Actually, he may have started to like get wind of the investigation while he was doing the Knapp interview during that time period. But it was the next year, after 1989, he came out with the Knapp interview on KTLAS, whatever. And the next year he was like in court. George Knapp went to court. George Knapp was the one that turned him in, apparently, right? Like that's the story, right? That George Knapp claims that he turned him in because why? Because Bob was gonna fuck his story up. That's why. Like think about that. Like what? Like George Knapp turned him in. George Knapp literally snitched on him about that, according to George Knapp. And so that was like the next year, man. That was from around the same time, like in the same time period, dude.
Can't you run a brothel and work at Area 51 at the same time?
I'm sure you can. Yeah, I mean, it seems like I don't know. I mean, he was like he had the rooms like wired for sound. They were allegedly, I don't know, possibly blackmailing some of the Johns. That was a theory that I had at one time. I was like, well, I think the Bob was like, I think his story. I think one of the Johns was pillow talking. One of his women, and then like he stole the story. From like one of his Johns. But I don't think that now. Yeah, dude.
Is
Like
there
he
are
was absolutely running a brothel.
since he was convicted, that means there's court documents that show dates of when he was actually running the brothel, right?
He was convicted of pandering. All right, he pled down pandering. He didn't get convicted of
Oh,
running the brothel, but I have those. I have the court documents. I'm trying to find them right now.
and I
Dude, I have like 2,000 PDFs.
and this
So
comment's not against you. I'm just saying. So all this time we've been talking about how he ran a brothel, and we don't know for sure he was convicted of pandering or.
I know for a fact that he was running a brothel. He pled down to pandering. Yeah,
How do you go from brothel to pandering? Like I feel like we get pandered to every
it's
day.
I mean,
Tony, sometimes
Zim, do you have a?
a district attorney will drop a higher crime to a lesser one.
Yeah, the timing, according to his story, it was after his wife, right? So it could, if it's all lies, yeah, it could have been the whole time.
Isn't it? I thought brothels were illegal in Nevada.
Again, timing. Now they are. Now they are.
He paved the way, man.
That's why he was. Yeah, that's why. No, dude. I mean, he was. It's still illegal in Las Vegas. Like cities that have a population in Nevada over 500,000, I think, are not allowed to have brothels legally. I used to live in Las Vegas, so but if you go outside of, I think the nearest it's like Pahrump, which is where Art Bell lived and where he had his Coast to Coast studio. That was in Pahrump, which is right outside of like Boulder City. Yeah, it's like that way, where they have the Hoover Dam. And in Pahrump, you're legally allowed to, have brothels because their population is only a few 100,000. But Bob's was in like Las Vegas proper, like in the metro area, out of an apartment. That was what he was doing.
Even if they're legal too, you still have to have the proper permits and licensing. So it's possible that he simply just, started his own without the proper paperwork.
No, I mean it was inside like Las Vegas metro area, like in Clark County was where the brothel was.
Man, I would not ever go to a brothel with Bob fucking Lazar.
Why not?
What's your favorite brothel, Kraft? What's your favorite?
Probably one where they just like you sit down and they just read you Freud all day. They don't even like the women just like
I've legitimately
I've
never lived in a state where those things were legal, nor would I ever go to one.
That sounds a little judgmental, I gotta say. Brothels are
no, absolutely no judgment. Zero judgment here. It's just not my thing.
I'm with you. I'm just kidding.
My mother.
All right, so here we go. So Bob Lazar, I've got the court records. All right, so here's from 2005. He was United States. This is in the District Court of New Mexico, where he was living at the time. Albuquerque. Go figure. Bob was okay. So USA plaintiff, the government versus United Nuclear Scientific defendant for 3 different charges. 1 for delivery of a banned hazardous substance. 2 for delivery of, so 2 counts of delivery of a banned, 3 counts of delivery of a banned hazardous substance. And it looks like, so in or about May or June 2003 in Edgewood within the District of New Mexico, defendant United Nuclear Scientific LLC did introduce and deliver for interstate commerce banned hazardous substances and did in a blah, 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 5 pounds of potassium percolate. This is from New Mexico to Maryland, all right? A package that contained 5 pounds of potassium percolate. I know I fucked that up. Approximately 2 pounds of aluminum German dark powder, approximately 1/2 pound of sulfur, 50 feet of fuse, approximately 1,000 tubes, 2,000 end caps, and these were all banned substances, hazardous, that were used, that were intended to produce fireworks. So this isn't the one that is related to the homicide, but that's 2005. So 2006 was the date when this affidavit was signed, or when this like indictment was signed. And I think he pled down. I don't think he was found guilty of like any of this. I think he kind of got it dismissed, or I don't think he had to plead guilty. He definitely didn't go to prison for it or serve any jail time at all. And this is just one of his cases, and I'll find the other ones here.
Another top-down piece of evidence there. No jail time. No, the whole George Knapp is the godfather of modern ufology, right? That connection to the father-in-law is huge, and that's something I had never heard before. And that's where I would, otherwise I would be right with you. Yeah, it was. I would think that he was just being fed bullshit if they were considering him for, because they do need to bring in talent. People need to bring in talent. Um, I have a lot of friends that are that ran a lot of government subcontract stuff. My wife, and they have like high school educations and training school. You know what I'm saying? And the doctors work under them. My old ex, almost son-in-law, he's at AT&T. He's one of their top troubleshooters. Everybody from MIT works under him. So people do bring in people that are talented, that have a knack. So that part was believable. But the whole thing with George Knapp's father-in-law makes me think, look the other way at it. What purpose would it have served to keep things in the gray about new technologies? And this area of 51 things don't have to be things that are successfully tested and operating. That's where you would test things that fail, right? So maybe a nuclear powered craft is like, nah, this is too dirty, or anything that you can't control because of the excessive propulsion. So going back to his connection to, I know people have said that he wasn't the guy building the rocket and the car, but he was attached to that. He was in newspaper articles about having his bicycle and his car being under control while going very fast. I think people that work there might be interested in a person like that. That doesn't mean that he passed the muster. Maybe he was asked about, brought in, and failed by being given misinformation. That if it's bottom up is how I see what the case was.
All right, so Bob, he paid $30,000 in fines, and they dropped all the charges.
My friend wants to know what the chemical's name was.
Potassium percolate, sulfur, aluminum powder, German dark was the type of aluminum powder. And yeah, it's potassium. Okay, perchlorate. So PERCHLORATE, 2.5 pounds of that. I think it's like the interstate shipping of the stuff that kind of made it, like, especially together. I think that's what made it illegal. Because the federal government, they're like, it's like their big concern is like when stuff crosses state lines. That's like feds take over. It's like it may be illegal to have something in a state, but the moment it crosses state lines,
Yeah, especially when used for a murder.
that stuff wasn't for the murder. That stuff was for just a fireworks customer. It was intended to make fireworks. The chemical that was used for a murder, I'm trying to find that document right now.
Yeah, don't share that. That's an info hazard.
I mean, I'm not going to share the name of the chemical, but I'm going to find out exactly like what happened.
Was it
I have the document
tied
somewhere.
to poisoning, or was it tied to explosives? It sounds like something that even had a wick.
Someone used it to murder somebody. Someone used the chemical, bought the chemical, and used it to murder another human being. And that person was being charged for the murder of somebody.
By poisoning them or
By poison.
blowing them up?
Yeah, by poison. Well, we could. I mean, if hell, Kraft, Zim, if you guys want to, we can restart the Art Bell episode with John Lear, and I think that's what we're gonna do. All right, guys. So we're gonna, unless anybody wants to come up from the audience, we were listening beforehand to the 1992, the first Art Bell call-in episode where John Lear was being interviewed, and then guess who called? Bob Lear. I mean, Bob Lear. Bob Lazar called in. It was the first time that he ever spoke publicly, as far as I know, besides the George Knapp interviews. First time that he ever spoke on Art Bell. So after Rich speaks, we'll probably listen to like 30 minutes, if you want to stick around. And then, we'll probably listen to 30 minutes of that Art Bell interview from 1992. And then, we'll see if anybody's left, if anybody's still here, and, discuss it. But Rich, what's up?
Hey, yeah, thanks for letting me pop in. Sorry I missed the first hour and a half of this space, so you may have already said it, but I heard you mentioned something about Bob Lazar having a chicken ranch type thing or brothel, correct? Yes? Do you know the name of it?
He had a brothel inside of a apartment. It was like
really?
it didn't have a name, and yeah, I mean it was like a prostitution operation. It wasn't really now he claims that he and his wife invested in a brothel in the early
In
80s,
Vegas?
and that's how he had money somewhere outside of Vegas. A legal brothel
Yeah.
is what he claims that he and his wife invested in the early 80s, and that's how he claims that he had money to kind of fuck around, and not work,
But there's no
throughout
evidence
the
of that.
80s. After that, I haven't been able to find any evidence of that. There's people that have like seriously questioned whether that was true or not. Whether that was really the source of the money that he lived off of, in the late 80s when he was not employed, when he claimed to have been employed by, Area 51, but
Okay, but there, I
best
mean,
as
look
far
at
as anybody
his.
can tell.
Okay, so I mean, you can kind of underrate that backwards. You can look at his lifestyle and figure out, the cash equivalent of what he should be making at a brothel run out of an apartment, and then check out his actual lifestyle and see if that meshes. You know what I mean?
I mean, he was driving a brand new Corvette, Stingray, or not Stingray, but Z06 or Z what it was a badass Corvette, brand new back then. He was living pretty well,
Okay.
yeah.
So that would lead to a story that he was doing pretty decent and probably making cash.
Yeah, but it wasn't a pink Cadillac or purple Cadillac.
Okay, but regardless,
I don't know. I mean,
he
like,
had access to
who knows?
cash that he could afford a lifestyle that he could have some toys on. Because if you got money to blow on a Corvette, you've got disposable income, and usually it's cash. You want to find somewhere to put it. You can't put it in a bank account, and you're going to make cash at a brothel, right? So if he had access to
Yeah,
it,
what's the point?
I'm just
Yeah.
saying that, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
like
So
what's
maybe,
the overall?
maybe his story about the brothel is true. Like I would, there, and you know what? Whether we agree with it or not, on an ethical standpoint, it's a business and it's legitimate in the outskirts of Vegas. You're allowed to do it. Am I not? Am I correct? Like they're not illegal
Not in Vegas, but
outside of it.
outside of Vegas,
Yeah,
like,
outside,
yeah,
they're
absolutely.
legal, right?
Yeah, like nobody's
Okay.
saying that. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, all that I'm saying about the brothel is that was his claim, how he was independently kind
And
of
do you believe that?
financially stable. I don't know. Like I said, like I have no idea. I've been able to find any evidence of where the money. I think that, he was actively kind of running a brothel during the Area 51 years, quote unquote Area 51 years, when he was really cheating on his wife, like fucking running a brothel, and that's why he, came up with the story. That's part of the reason why he probably agreed to do the story about Area 51 is to have an excuse to go, well, cheat on his wife.
Really, it's all sex driven. I mean, I see
No, no, no,
Diddy's
no.
thing; it's
It's
all
definitely
sex
not like
driven, which just blows me away. But
no, no. Please don't.
okay,
Please don't. No,
okay,
please don't bring up Diddy.
okay.
Rich, like the main reason that I started the space is I was doing some research and I uncovered some parallels between. All right, since we got a bunch of new people in here,
Yeah, thank
all right,
you.
let me go over my theory. All right, this
Okay.
is like okay, so here's what I think happened with Bob Lazar's story, and it'll take me just give me like 4 minutes, guys. I promise it'll be worth it if you're interested in this story. So Bob Lazar, uh, hold on, let me pull up the not even prepared. All right, so the Bob Lazar story, right? Always in question, all right? Everybody, thought, well, where did he get the story from, right? If he did lie about it, it's a pretty convincing story. Like it has elements, it seems real. Okay, well, let me tell you about this guy named Harry Bob Fecter, all right? Bob was the guy's nickname. Harry Fecter, Dr. Harry Fecter, born 1921, all right? Died 2003, lived in Vegas from 1967 until he died. All right. First of all, this guy had degrees out the wazoo. He had a degree in physics from Stanford, PhD in physics from Stanford, degree in electrical engineering from Washington University. Okay. He had training in radar from MIT. He worked as a physicist, a supervisory physicist at Los Alamos. I guess that would be a management position as a physicist at Los Alamos Labs, National Labs. This guy, after WW2, worked reverse engineering Nazi technology, such as infrared technology and V2 technology. He was reverse engineering Nazi technology captured from Peenemünde, which was the same site, the same Nazi research base that von Braun was at. This guy was friends with Warner von Braun. This guy worked on classified projects with Robert Oppenheimer. That's Oppenheimer, the guy who made the nuclear bomb. That's his brother. All right. This guy worked for Boeing. Dr. Bob Fecter worked for Boeing on what was the precursor to surface to air missiles. At the time, they called it ground to air pilotless aircraft. All right, this guy founded. I mean, it just keeps going. This guy, Dr. Bob Fechter, founded the physics department at UNLV, University of Nevada at Las Vegas. This guy, along with a Nobel laureate and another scientist, discovered two subatomic particles. I don't know what the hell that means, but it's pretty. Apparently, it's pretty amazing. It's like career making. All right, it's like some people that would be their entire legacy would be just discovering one subatomic particle. This guy discovered two. Uh, he also designed the electrical system that managed the largest particle accelerator at the time that was outside of Chicago during the 60s. All right. So this guy worked with particle accelerators. This guy also pioneered metal fuel cell technology that used aluminum to power automobiles. All right. This guy is a fucking legend, a American hero, a legend. And guess who else Bob Fechter is? George Knapp's father-in-law. This
Oh,
guy,
okay. No, that
Dr.
was your
Bob
post,
Fechter,
right?
is.
That was your post you did the other day. That was a really good one. Yeah, I appreciate guys like you in our community. We need researchers like
Let
this,
me let
right?
me.
Like keep going.
We can talk about how great I am in a minute, right? Just
No,
hold on,
no,
hold
I'll never do that, Grider.
on. I'm just joking, just joking. No, but seriously, like the father, that's his father-in-law, and like they were friends. Like George Knapp and Dr. Bob Fechter, they were friends. Like going back to like the 80s. I mean, to 1985 when George Knapp moved here and was attached. It's like they were friends. They were close friends. All right, and it's just are you telling me like here's the way I see it.
Your
It's the
story
only
makes
way
more
that
sense, right?
this is possible.
Your story, and you're not even there yet, is already aligning. That makes more logical sense than the Bob Lazar story. So keep going.
It is the Bob Lazar story.
I
Like
know,
the
but I
Dr.
know where you're
Bob,
going with this, and I
Harry
love it.
Bob
Go.
Fechter's. Well, let me get. Just let me get there. Let me get there. Harry Bob, like Dr. Bob Fechter's story, is literally the Bob Lazar story. If you swap out Nazi reverse engineering Nazi technology with reverse engineering UFO technology, it's the same fucking story basically. And the Bob, oh well, they're both Bobs. That's kind of serendipitous. Like I'm like I put it on the infographic that I put up in the nest. I think I shared it up in the nest. Let me do it again. It's up there now. And like the whole kind of like the kind of parallels, between like working on automobile technology that is kind of fringe, or it's that's kind of serendipitous. That was prior to the fact that Bob Lazar did work at Los Alamos Labs. That's a fact. He didn't work as a physicist, but then that guy, Dr. Bob Fechter, worked as a physicist. That's kind of serendipitous. It doesn't mean anything, on the surface, or really even below the surface. It doesn't matter. That's just coincidence. But everything else, it's like, it's literally the same story. And I think either it's like a storytelling by proxy. And I think that's one way that George Knapp and Bob Lazar could have justified this lie, this hoax to families, to their families, to the people that they love, their friends. Like, how would you justify telling a lie like this to like your father? Think about like how would you possibly do that if you're Bob Lazar? How would you how do you tell your father no? Like I do have a degree, Oh, and by the way, that's one thing too is or Bob Lazar claimed that he went to all these schools. Well, he claimed that he went to Caltech and got a degree in electrical engineering. Dr. Bob Fechter did go and get an electrical engineering degree from Stanford. It's like, and then he claimed that he went to MIT. Dr. Bob Fechter studied, training on radar systems at MIT. It's like, so, but if you were to try to justify telling this huge lie, to your own family, you're like, your close immediate family, how would you do that? Well, the only way I could see that you would do that in that situation would be, hey, we're telling like, George Knapp's father-in-law wants me to tell his father-in-law's story. The father-in-law wants me to tell the story, but I'm gonna have to, kind of it's like an acting job, maybe. That's one way to look at it. This is me speculating. This is me speculating
Can I
right now.
jump
This is
in?
not
Can I
based on
jump in right
anything
now?
except for
Just
yeah,
okay.
you can jump
So
in, yeah.
yeah, just let me compile this. So, are you hinting at or that George Knapp could be the one planting his father-in-law story as Bob Lazar so he could get the information out for the greater good that we keep hearing about with Corbell and Knapp? And maybe this Lazar has a hidden meaning in it, right? No?
No, there is no hidden meaning. The hidden
Well,
meaning
what's the
is
Lazar part?
uh
Like, is that made
what do you
up? Like,
mean?
okay, let's just speculate that George Knapp said, you know what, fuck it, I've got to get this information out to the public. I'm not going to say it's my father-in-law to protect him. We're going to make up a story and call the guy Bob Lazar, and then just push
No,
the story
but
through.
Bob Lazar
Then,
is Bob
yeah,
Lazar.
yeah,
All that
I
I'm
know,
saying
yeah,
is
yeah,
like,
I know Bob Lazar is Bob Lazar, but I'm just saying maybe he pushed the story through him and to give some, to tell the story. But what you're finding is the credibility things. You're piecing it out right now, and
I
the real
think
story is Bob Fector.
okay, here, like, yeah. I mean, well, Bob Fector was in 1985, and okay, in 1988 when Bob Lazar, started to come out with his story. I think it was 1989, but he approached George Knapp, to talk about a quote unquote allegedly. This is the story is that they started working on the Bob Lazar story, in 1988, late 1988. Anyways, let's say 1988, just to give him the benefit of the doubt. Okay, so that means that Bob Fector, 1983, or excuse me, he was 83 in 2003 when he died. So what's that? 13 years, 14. So 14, 83. So he was what, 69? Is that right? Like, is that right? Is that math right? 69. He was 69 years old in 1988. All right. Bob Fector, Dr. Fector was 69 years old then. So like, I mean, he was retired at that point. Last thing he wants to do is like go and tell a fucking go and tell his life story, like become a media personality about all this. And also, he wasn't allowed to tell the story. That's the thing, is like he probably wasn't allowed to talk about this classified stuff that he worked on. Right? Some of it, most of it was probably still classified. So what do? You swap out the classified stuff for aliens, like I don't know, like we're seeing nowadays. Maybe there's, I don't know, something to be seen there, some correlation, right? You take out the classified information, just replace it with UFOs, right? That's Dopser will approve that, right? Or the government doesn't care if you lie about aliens. You can tell stories about UFOs all day long, but the moment that you start talking about the classified reverse engineered tech that is still like above a special access program level, it's like then you got problems. All right. So but you're 69 years old. You're in your golden years. All right. A big family too, like Dr. Bob Fector, George Knapp's wife's family, a big family. Like the guy's a patriarch of a family. He
Is it
doesn't
well
have
known
any.
that
He probably
it's
didn't
his
have any
father-in-law?
desire.
Is it well known? Like, how did you find out that that's his father-in-law? Like, that's big.
I'm telling you for a fact
Like
it's his father-in-law.
dots.
Like
Do you
yeah,
have evidence of
for a
that?
fact.
How did you
Yeah,
know?
and but I'm not
Like,
gonna
is it well known?
for
Is it just like that's like okay?
no, it's not well known. This is not well known at all. This is like, but I'm not gonna do like I know. Okay, it's like using public available resources. Like dude, I'm not looking to like put like I mean, you can
No,
find the
I'm just, you
information
know
like
what?
if you search.
Listen,
Yeah,
yeah. You're a great researcher, and I'm just saying. So through your research, you found that Bob Fector is in fact George Knapp's father-in-law. Is what you're saying?
yeah, it's a fact. Yeah. So what was I talking about before?
That exactly that. Bob and Fector being part of Knapp's family, and how you found it.
No, I mean like before that, like before you asked me about that. All right, I fucking forgot.
Sorry, buddy. It was about the whole thing, but it was about your research and the process of you going through everything.
I forgot what I was talking about. Does anybody does anybody in the audience, was anybody listening and recall what I was saying before Rich asked me about the source of like, the information
You were about
about
to
how I
play
verified.
the rest of the video or the tape.
No, oh yeah, no. Okay, so I remember. All right, so there's like a couple of possibilities. All right, there's one Bob Lazar's story is that he got Edward Teller to give him a referral to work at to work for EG&G, right, to do this top secret work out at Area 51, right? That's his story, right? Outside of an auditorium at Los Alamos after a lecture, Edward Teller, was outside and he brought the Los Alamos paper that he was on the, Bob Lazar was on the front page of the Los Alamos newspaper, for his jet car. And that's the story, right? Is that Edward Teller was outside before he did a lecture, and Bob Lazar walked up and said, "Hey, I'm on that paper that you're reading," and that's how they met, allegedly. And that then, like, he called Edward Teller up a couple of months or a couple of years later and asked for a referral to work for EG&G or to do, like, I forgot exactly how he claims that it happened, but like, what's more likely, that happened, or that George Knapp, your buddy's like father-in-law, who is literally about as legendary, although not as celebrity legendary, but about as legendary in the scientific community as Teller was at that time. Like, I mean, Dr. Bob Vector was a fucking legend, but more so like he was a scientist, like he was a celebrity to like scientist. He wasn't out doing Edward Teller type of like, PR stuff. But what's more likely, that like Dr. Bob Vector may have wrote that? Maybe Bob Lazar did work at Area 51. Maybe he did get a referral, but he got it from Dr. Bob Vector. And then, when Bob fucked it up by, you know, uh, by like, telling everybody, about all the secret stuff that he was going to work on out there, and bringing a group out, to check out, the lights moving around. Do you know one thing that I found interesting? Do you guys remember the story about how Bob Lazar, about how when he was still like employed, quote unquote, out of Area 51, how he brought like a group of people out to, watch the lights and everything, right? Watch the UFOs.
Wasn't one
He
of them
brought
Johnny
John Lear
Lear?
and Gene Huff. Please, God, let me finish. He brought, Gene Huff and Bob Lazar, or God dang it, and John Lear and a group of people, his girlfriend at the time, out there to watch the lights, and they got caught, right? Do you know who he didn't bring out there to watch those orbs? George Knapp. George Knapp wasn't out there getting caught looking at orbs, right? You know what I'm saying? And maybe it's because George Knapp's father-in-law gave Bob Lazar the recommendation that got him that job out there, probably maybe working on a particle accelerator, because they did have a particle accelerator out there at that time. That shit was really classified. All right. So maybe just maybe Bob Lazar did get a job, working on that particle accelerator. But part of the process of onboarding somebody in intelligence, usually in classified stuff, is to do an intelligence test, and not like an IQ test, an intelligence test called a barium meal test. That's where you feed somebody some bullshit and you see if they turn around and they tell other people, you see what, you flush something through the pipes and you see what comes out the other side, you know, and that's also to identify like the source of a leak of information, but also to, know if you can trust somebody. So let's say maybe Bob Lazar did, maybe he was, maybe it's all true about him getting a job out there, but it was George Knapp's father-in-law. And, as part of the security onboarding out there, they first show you the fake fucking flying saucer, uh, set piece that they have set up. They show you the fake documents about, about Zeta Reticuli, which the Air Force at that time, the government was known, Doty, of like making those fake documents, feeding them to people during the 80s, right? Maybe they show you the fake documents and see if you go blab about the obviously not real, not real shit. There's no aliens on Zeta Reticuli, but they see if you go and you turn on, you blab about it, because if you blab about, that, then they don't want to trust you with like the particle accelerator information, right? If they can trust you not to go and blab to your friends about the flying saucer that you saw at work, they can probably trust you not to go blab about the particle accelerator that you're out there working on, right? That makes sense. So let's say that's a possibility, all right? So let's say, okay, so then Bob gets caught. He fucks up, and clearly that looks bad for the father-in-law, Bob Vector. So Knapp is he's pissed, right? I got my father-in-law to get you a job, and you do all this, you turn around, you screw us over. He's mad, and so then Bob's like tries to find a way to salvage it. All right, well, we'll just like, we'll make it into like a news story. So, I mean, I don't know. Do you guys see where I'm going with this? Like, there's so many different possibilities, to explain this, but I don't know. Does that make any sense? Oh hell, I've got Zim and Rich up here, guys. Do you guys think, like, does that make any sense? Like like, what do you think? That angle?
Yeah, it makes logical sense.
But
But are you sure it's Bob Fetcher? Like, I see Knapp is married to an N. Fetchner, not a
Yeah,
Fetcher.
yeah, dude.
It's different
Yeah,
spelling.
it's. I know, dude. I know. That's like they did that on purpose to,
Okay.
obfuscate. Like look on
Your
a
story
people
is
search
making more
engine.
logical sense, and I
Look
can
on
see
a
where it's going.
Rich.
And yeah,
Look
keep
on
going.
a people search engine. Well,
Okay.
like that's all I'm gonna say. Like I'm not gonna say because like it's giving out his address. Please God.
Yeah.
By the way, guys,
No,
please no, please God, do not harass George Knapp or his wife over this. All right, don't
dude.
like. There's no. I mean, dude, like I gotta say it. Rich, I'm not talking to you specifically. Talking just in general, right? This is not something to like. Don't like harass like his wife. Don't her like. There's no need to like bother George and his wife about this, right? They're in their golden years. They have like they have kids. Yeah, I think but the whole point is like they have a family. They don't need to be fucked with over this, all right? Like the day, it's like our Bob was like nobody needs to be harassed over this, or any of like his wife's family, like extended family. Don't be calling his fucking brother-in-law, asking about their dad, it just there's no it's true. Like all this is true. Like I haven't it's all verifiable. And also it's a great example of why you should use the article that I wrote, not under this account. By the way, guys, like I'm Grider. I don't hide it. This is my alt account because I like to make up funny names, and this is my like comedy alt. But my normal account is Grider. If I don't know if you guys know that. That's a more popular account. And under the account, I'll post a link to it up in the nest. I have an article that I wrote on how to step by step remove yourself from people search engines. All right, and this is a great time to advertise that. I don't make any money off of it. It's a free article. You should go and use the article to opt out of people search engines. Because if George Knapp would have done that, then I would have never found out about this. I would have never been able to make this connection. So you should do the same. You'll never get doxxed. If you follow the step by step, I'll post it up in the nest here in a minute. If you follow that article, then it's like 15, I think, sites that you're able to opt out, and then those are like the feeder sites that smaller search engine sites scrape to get information, and so it'll filter down, and you'll be basically wiped off the internet. So I'll post a link up into the nest.
I appreciate you doing that, Grider.
It's interesting that they obfuscated the connection. That's interesting. That says a lot to me.
Yeah, man, the misspelling had to be intentional. Like, there's no other explanation. It's smart. Yeah.
My friends tied to that kind of stuff, they never use their last names. Never did on Facebook, any of it. They always used like middle names, initials, and different or no last names. It's just part of the course, when you worked in classified settings. But they knew a long time ago what the internet was all about, right?
Yeah, it's almost like well, I can see it being developed into an Akashic record with the development of AI. And that's why certain bills are in certain countries right now. The ones that are scaring the hell out of me, like the one they dropped in Canada, Bill 36, where they can go back in time and put anything that you say that they think is hate speech. There's no defined terms, and you just end up in jail, just like we're seeing in the UK. But they can go back from the beginning of the internet days now. It's not a fun place to envision that going forward, but
Yeah, just don't
we'll
ever
see what
put anything
happens.
on the internet it's like everything's permanent, everything can be found. Any post that you make, it's more than likely being archived somewhere. There's a record at a government level. Like if, unless somebody gets a screenshot of your deleted tweet, it's more than likely gone, for the public. But yeah, as far as the government, like, yeah, they've got everything database.
Yeah, I've been involved with cases where they've been subpoenaed and they can do it if they want. I've seen it.
Here's a fascinating thing. Okay, so speaking about like people search databases, this is something that I brought up in like a couple of months ago. Is that when I was kind of doing a background research on like Sands and on Elizondo, this is like a couple of months ago. Like I said, an interesting thing that I found is that Jason Sands, you can't find him on like he's been opted out of every people search website ever. Like you cannot find anything, not a fucking phone number, not an email, not an address, nothing, right? You can't find any record of him.
Can I
Clearly,
interject?
he's I mean, I
Do you
guess
think Sands is his? Do you think that's his real name?
yes, that's his real name. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. I mean, that's as far as I know, that's his real name. It could be a fake name. I don't know. But the Jason Sands name, oh man, Rich, Yeah, I mean, site. Oh, let me realign. All right, yeah. All right, so the names, people databases. All right. So an interesting thing that I found is that like Jason Sands, Kirkpatrick, uh, who else did I think it was Jason Sands and Kirkpatrick have been opted out of, every people database going back. You can't find anything. You can't find anything on Kirkpatrick. Not a phone number, not an address, not a any nothing. Completely wiped. So that tells me that like most likely they did that as part of their job, right? Most likely that's a standard thing for police officers to do that, is to not use social media and to be opted out of every, people search website. They actually do that. Like they have a service that does it, for, police officers. I'm sure it's the same way for intelligence. That has to be part of the onboarding is once you get opted out so that, it's like, so your information is not easily found, by some adversary. Like as a police officer, the issue would be is that you arrest somebody, and then they get out of jail and they go and they, go and burn your house down or something. So, sir, same thing with intelligence. Information is everything. But think about it. Think about it like this, though. So Kirkpatrick, Sands, nothing. They're ghost. Elizondo can find everything on them going back 30 years. Not opted out of a single website, not opted out of a single database. I mean, you've got, Who's Lou, the documentary by Manny, great documentary. I mean, that was all public information. So, like, what does that tell you? Like, why is Elizondo not opted out of a single database, but Sands and Kirkpatrick are opted out of every single one of them? What does that tell you? Like, what it tells you something. It told me, there's something to be, I don't know, there's something to be said about that, right? They're different. Like, there's a difference there, and that puts them into two different groups. I think Sands and Kirkpatrick, as opposed to Elizondo. There's there's something different there. I don't know. Make your own conclusions, I guess. All right, guys. I'll go on and I'll start back on the Art Bell 1992 Bob Lazar John Lear uh show. This is like the first one that Bob Lazar ever did. First show. It was actually John Lear was the guest on the Art Bell show in this episode, and then Bob Lazar called in. So we're about 20 minutes into the Bob Lazar. We're at the portion where Bob Lazar had already called in. They're about to start doing guests or doing phone ins. So people that are listening to the show are about to start asking Bob Lazar questions. And one interesting thing that I should probably go back and play, but it would take me 10 minutes to find the exact quote. Bob Lazar in this, like, I'll clip it out and I'll put it in, like, I'll tweet it out after we get done, or I'll tweet it out sometime throughout the space when I have the chance. But Bob Lazar says in this episode, in this show, he said, quote unquote, that he didn't know the exact element that was used as a fuel source. He was not sure. That's what he told, like, that's what he said, like, in this, sometime prior to what we're about to listen to. He said that he didn't know whether it was element 114 or 115. He wasn't even sure of like what the fuel source was according to him. So like what like are you this was 1992. So 3 years after he came out with the story, like how are you not how are you not sure? Like why are you saying element 114? Like what? It just what? But it's highly entertaining though. The guy's highly. I mean, Bob Lazar is a cultural icon. I love him. Like I love his story. I love him as like a figure. I still am a fan of Bob Lazar, but I don't believe Bob Lazar. So in about play this for about 30 minutes, and then if anybody's left, then like if anybody is still left, that wants to speak or is in the audience, and I guess we'll go over what we listened to. But yeah, so here we go. This is Coast to Coast. It's there's about an hour and 30 minutes left of this show. It's December 12th, 1992. So here we go.
It's a tough call. It's something that has to be decided on, as things are happening. But given the same set of circumstances, I probably would have done the same thing, perhaps a little different.
A lot of magazines are writing a lot of things about both of you. Do you find they generally get it right, or is it exaggerated baloney that most of them print?
Well, most of the people don't have access to the information, and I'm part of the problem. I don't do interviews. I don't do talk shows. I don't go around and give lectures. I just don't do anything. And I'm constantly being hounded for information.
So without the information, they tend to make some of it up, probably.
Well, so some of the information has come out, especially in George Knapp's special. That's where I essentially spilled my guts, said everything that happened to me, and kind of wanted to really leave it at that. The technical information I made a tape about for the people that really wanted to know the nitty gritty, and left it at that, and that was it. And people would look through those two things. Everything essentially that I experienced and happened was contained within those two things. But inevitably things get screwed up, and a lot of hearsay, and there's an awful 99.9% of the UFO community are crazy. These people are just absolutely out of their mind, and I really want to have nothing to do with them. And they're tied in with all kinds of strange factions of groups, and it's really impossible to weed out any real information coming from most of these sources, these magazines, and even the larger groups. So I really have to stay away from it. And that gets people upset and thinks I'm trying to, hide things from them, and I'm called government agents and stuff like that. And it's, the list is never ending.
99 and 9/10%, Bob?
Perhaps more.
But with your continued association then with John Lear, I take it you view him in one of the top very small percentage points of those who may be on to something.
No, I don't. I don't really associate with him. John Lear does his own thing, and I say, and there's an awful 99.9% of the UFO community is coming from it, and that gets people upset and thinks I'm trying to.
Continued association then with John Lear, I take it you view him in one of the top very small percentage points of those who may be on to something.
No, I don't. I don't really associate with him. John Lear does his own thing, and I don't.
John, comments?
No, we have some of my ideas are far out because I'm not a scientist. Bob is a scientist. He dealt with things that he saw with, worked with, were proven to him. To me, it's all I'm dealing with is speculation.
Well, to the casual,
I've heard, and that's what I deal with.
Well, exactly. But to the casual observer, somebody like me, everything you've told me, John, about how they travel, means of propulsion, the kind of creatures they are, all the rest of this sort of thing, is underwritten or strengthened by what Bob Lazar says. Don't you realize that, Bob? You're saying, I saw the discs. Yes, they exist.
Well, yeah, the information, like I said, the only information I know are the technical aspects of the craft. And that information John has, we've talked about that, and he understands it, and the information that he relays like that is absolutely correct, and I'll verify that. I actually got to work with that stuff. I don't know, aliens didn't take me to their planet. I don't have proof where they came from. I don't know how any deal was cut. I don't know about abductions. I don't know about all that other stuff.
Right. Listen to me. We've got to stop here. I've got a newscast I've got to do. Please stay around just a little while longer, will you, Bob?
Sure.
All right. Stay right there.
When you visit Las Vegas, you can enjoy your sights.
Both back on the air a bit.
He is my friend, but he...
Well, this is all flooring me a bit, but it's fun.
Just like to say, it's really a privilege to be on with Bob. He is my friend, but he never goes on any of these interviews, and it's just really nice to have him on for once. He doesn't back me up on everything, but he does back me up on the stuff that he saw.
Well, let's try a question on you here. That's a very nice compliment for Bob. If Bob Lazar did get the equipment or the technology and ever did build a time machine, would you sit in it while he pulled the switch?
Sure.
You would? I think he would, Bob.
No, it's strange. I get a lot of letters from people, and there have been quite a few people that really think that I have a time machine, and I would really like to know how this got started. There are people with honest requests wanting to know how much that I would charge them. They need to go back to the 50s to rescue their brother from being killed or like that, and I really have to make it clear. I really don't have a time machine, and I don't possess the technology to make one either.
Right.
So, please don't write to me asking that.
Well, there is this, though, Bob. If you had built a time machine using some of that technology, Would you be likely to admit it? That may give you some clue as to why people think that you may have it, even though you say you don't.
Yeah. Well,
I'd like to just...
well taken, I guess.
I would like to take just a couple of calls just for the fun of it, and let's see if anybody has any questions.
Listen, before we do, can I just tell the folks how to get a hold of this tape that Bob put out, because he won't advertise himself, but
yeah,
I really think it's important that if you do want to know about this technology and what Bob saw up at the test site, he does have a videotape available, and you can write to Tridot Corporation. That's TRIDOT, Tridot Corporation, 1324 Southeastern, and then that's in Las Vegas, and it's Las Vegas 89104, and the price is $29.95 plus $3 shipping and handling. And if you want to know about this stuff, you just can't make a better investment. I know Bob doesn't advertise this very much, but I think it's really important.
Yeah, and there's going to be another one too, isn't there, Bob?
Yeah, it's kind of in the works, but that tape was a lot of people that viewed the first tape. It's a technical tape, but it's made for the layman to understand all the technology and how it works. And there's just been a request for a tape that goes heavy into the physics. A lot of technical people, scientists and that sort of thing, want all the specifics exactly, formulas and things along those lines, and that's what the second tape will probably cover. I'm not really sure about that yet. Nothing's been done with it, and
What kind of technology would that give away?
Well, really, we're just talking about the how specifically the amplifiers work, things along those lines.
With the knowledge, Bob, of roughly how they work, would it be possible for somebody on this earth to eventually, do you feel, build or duplicate that technology and build something that would do what that power plant does?
Well, it's just a matter of having access to certain material with some super heavy elements, such as element 115. With the proper material, we could absolutely build it. The technology is not millions of years ahead of us. You're looking at technology that's maybe hundreds and hundreds of years ahead of us. It's not that phenomenal. It really isn't. A lot of people, talk about it being even billions of years, and it really isn't. This technology is not that far-fetched once you get your hands around it. So it is quite feasible that we could eventually duplicate these systems, but not with materials that we have readily available right now. Mm-hmm. There'd have to be another source for these materials.
Coming in, I asked this of John earlier, and it's another one he couldn't quite answer, but came up with a good answer nevertheless. I heard an astrologer who said that the sun, over the last 2 months, Bob, has lost roughly 0.1% of its output. Now, while I guess the output of the sun, which is a nuclear dynamo, does vacillate a little bit, this seemed to that person somewhat worrisome. Any comments on that?
I wouldn't be really concerned. I mean, the sun has a tremendous hydrogen supply, which is being, fusion reaction is being converted to helium, and you don't really have to be concerned about anything running out for probably about 5 billion years, and then at that point, there'll be some pretty dramatic changes.
There's no real problem that could develop in it causing enough of a drop to affect us ecologically.
No, as a matter of fact, when the sun begins to run out of fuel, it's going to swell. So it's not going to burn out like a candle.
All right, indulge just a couple calls here. We are a talk show. Wildcard line 3, you're on the air, Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell, John Lear, and Bob Lazar.
I finally made it in. Good.
Where are you calling from, sir?
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, all right.
All right. What I wanted to ask about the saucers and the alien technology was they must operate off from some type of communication frequency. Is it any way possible to put together some sort of a transmitter so that one could start putting out a signal to them?
All right, it's a good question. Bob, any insights into whatever communications capabilities they have?
Well, what bothers me with the communication, and of course there must be some in the craft, is that because of the gravitational field, everything is going to be distorted around the craft, whether it's radio waves, whether it's light waves. And in fact, someone had asked earlier how craft, I think they asked how craft seemingly disappears or underneath it. Well, this again is characteristic of the gravity amplifier, that it actually pulls light around it. For instance, I even mentioned in my tape that there are stars that are behind the sun, where the sun actually blocks our view, and we can see those stars. The reason why is the sun has a tremendous amount of gravity, pulls the light from the star up and around the sun so we can see it. In these disks, when they're operating, if they're in something called an Omicron configuration, if you're standing underneath the disk, you can't see it. You can only see the sky above it by the way light is bent around the craft. Now, the way I understand this to envelop the craft, I can't see how radio waves can get into the craft. And that's something that's puzzled me for a while. So there must be some other form of communication.
Would the gravity amplifiers themselves possibly provide the key to the kind of communication they use? In other words, something propelled or moved through time or space or both with the same technology. In other words, each new technology, lasers, for example, can be modulated, and you can use light to pass voice. And so I wonder if their technology might have in it a key to their communications.
It's quite possible. Quite possible there is something called, along the lines of a gravity phone.
Yeah.
Something that John and I have spoke about in depth. That it essentially is a gravity amplifier with a modulated output, and it is received. Again, this is just an educated guess, but it's certainly possible. But as far as there being a frequency you can tune in or transmit, I haven't seen anything along those lines that the crafts would receive.
So then their communications might be every bit as advanced or different, would be a better way to put it, than anything we're familiar with traditional RF frequency.
All right. Does anybody have anything to say? Anybody want to come up and speak about what we've just heard? If not, I'm going to start the next 30 minutes. And by the way, all right, so I started this space with like my Grider account, but the space crashed. Well, I unblocked like everybody on my block list when I started that space. And when the space crashed and I switched to this account, because, my Grider account, X just doesn't like my Grider account. So I switched to this account. I forgot to unblock everybody. And so like, I'm sorry, to like people that have been blocked. Like I know, yeah. So everybody's unblocked. It wasn't intentional. I unblocked like literally my entire block list with my Grider account. Space crashed and I forgot to when I switched to this account. So it wasn't intentional. But does anybody have anything to say? If not, Zim, do you have anything to say? If not,
Yeah,
we'll
man,
start.
great,
back.
great tape. The idea that these guys are sitting together in this interview and the timing, as you say, 92. I want to hear more of this kind of stuff. You want to hear what's changed in the dialogue and what hasn't. Yeah, very cool. Thanks for playing it.
Yeah, guys. All right, so we're at 2 hours and 33 minutes and there's about an hour and 20 minutes left. So we'll play about 40 minutes, and feel free to DM me if you have any burning questions or anything you want to say. We'll have Blue, if you want to say something, and then after that we'll go on and start playing the next 40 minutes. Blue, do you have anything to say? No? Okay. I'll go on and start start the show back on. So, all right, in about 40 minutes, and I'll post updates, like in 20 minutes, just like I did up in the nest, that way you guys can know how long until the break. So here we go.
Probably because they're traveling such tremendous distances, the crafts would get there years before their transmission did. So they can't use regular radio transmission. They have to use something that actually bends time and space.
Yeah, one would think that any insight into that at all might give one the ability eventually then to communicate, if not travel to these creatures, but communicate with their point of origin.
Right, I agree.
Wildcard Line 3, you're on the air, Coast to Coast AM with the group. Hello, are you there?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Turn your radio off, number one.
Okay. I've been trying to get through to you for a long time.
Where are you calling from?
I'm calling in from Las Vegas.
All right. Go ahead.
The first question is, this directed to John Lear, do the aliens have a philosophy about their own creator or creation? Number two, the supercluster that is to be built in Texas, Is that going to give any clue as to their technological advances?
All right, well, there's a question for each one of these
I don't know
two, really.
the philosophy, and I'd like to hear Bob's answer on that super collider. I've heard many people say, "Oh, they're building that to make 115," and I never asked Bob about it.
Element 115. Bob, what can you tell us about the super collider?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know a whole lot about the super collider. I do know the basic plan and what they're attempting to do. Is it going to be used to make 115? No. Again, if you're going to assemble an incredibly heavy element like that, other elements that we've synthesized up to 109, and that hasn't been really documented. But these have been put in accelerators for an incredibly long time at a tremendous cost of electrical power. And, we essentially have a yield of 1 or 2 atoms of the substance. If you're talking about something much higher than that, like an element 115, it's just inconceivable. You'd have to have this tremendous thing running at full power for decades to wind up with several atoms of a substance, if it can be done. So I've always contended that element 115 has got to, or it must have been naturally created.
All right. I'm right on top of another break, and gee whiz, there's just not enough time to say goodbye, so I guess you'll have to stay there for a minute. Stand by, both of you. That's known as one of the tricks of the trade. You're listening to the CBC and BRN Network. Right back.
KDWN Las Vegas.
Epicurean from New York, the sound gourmet are our...
This description and distributed on a mission that's grown from 6.
It really is.
And you're both back on the air again.
Yeah, Art, I don't know how you did it. It's an honor for me to be on this same program with Bob. I know the Pope couldn't get an interview with him. I don't know how you did. It really is.
Well, it is indeed an honor to have you here, Bob. It really is. If I might, let's expose you both to some more of the people. Wildcard Line 3, you're on the air, Coast to Coast AM with a group. Good morning.
Oh, yes. Boy, I'm really honored. This is my second time. I called earlier on the first-time caller line. You couldn't remember my third question, which had to do with Atlantis.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you. And thank you for the call back. John, that's right. It was about
Atlantis. Yes, they're probably, is based, in fact, for a lot of mythology. The one thing that I can't find any information on is, where did the myth of the dragon come from? Was there really something? I mean, usually there is a basis in fact, of most mythology. Something happened to make that. But I've always wondered where the dragon came.
All right. Well, at least you addressed it. Thank you. Good morning. You're on the air, Coast to Coast AM with the group here.
All right. Hold on. Let me turn down my radio.
Where are you calling from?
Arizona.
Arizona. All right.
Yeah. I wanted to know before I'm picking up off of Kadon, so you're about ready to go out. But I want to know where I can get the tapes from, the copies of them.
All right. I'm sure that'll please them. John, why don't you go ahead and give out the address with it?
Tridot Corporation, TRIDOT Corporation, and it's 1324. That's 1324 Southeastern, and it's Las Vegas, Nevada, 89104. 89104, and it's $29.95 plus $3 shipping and handling, and you'll really enjoy it.
All right. Bob, a question for you. Has anybody who's heard these stories or any of the publications or any official government agency subjected you to any sort of truth-telling trauma, injections, machines hooked up to you, anything to try and verify what you've said?
Well, when I first mentioned it to the, television network up here, I voluntarily took lie detector tests, but no, I never took any truth serum, and no one else has come after me or forced me to do anything.
Our local news anchor on Channel 8, I my guest went along with you and looked at and investigated. What was his personal determination after he finished looking into this and did his show? Do you know?
George Knapp, you mean?
That's right.
I'd like to answer that question. He was such a firm believer that he nearly discredited himself on a news show by when one of the girls said, "Well, George, what do you think?" And instead of the stock newsman's answer of saying, "Well, I think this deserves more investigation," he said, "I believe it." And he was called to task by his boss for saying that. So,
did he see anything that we didn't see?
May have had access to some information. But now, George wasn't that ardent of a believer in the beginning, as I wasn't either before I got involved with the project. But George did go to great lengths, traveling with me to Los Alamos and, going all over the place, tracing down leads, and things added up quickly to someone that put in that much effort. And he essentially put everything together and,
Yes, I have that show on tape. It was really something. Really something. All right, just one more very quick interruption, gentlemen. I'll be right back to you. Stay right there. My guests are John Lear and Bob Lazar, and if you've been with us, then you well understand the nature of the discussion. If not, then stay tuned.
If you own a gun or want to have the right to do so, your rights are under attack like never before. If you don't stay, citizens committed a...
I'm sorry, or I'm happy, or I'm in love, or what? When they're sent, because you don't have to go out and shop for it. You can do it. 264 calls.
Blank has to do with the English.
All right, let's take a couple of more calls. Good morning, Wildcard Line 3. You're on the air, Coast to Coast AM with the group here.
Yeah, I'd like to direct my question to John Lear. What any of this has to do with the English wheat fields where they make those designs, and which aliens changed those 64 different modifications? Was it the grays?
All right, thank you, sir. The crop circles first.
Obviously, it has something to do with the crop circles, but I don't know what, and I don't interest myself much with that phenomenon. It's pretty weird, and I read the magazines and stuff and look at it, but I don't know anything about it.
Well, I'm interested in directing a little of that to Bob. Bob, since you're a physicist, these damn crop circles, they really are all over the world. They're in Australia. They're in too many places for two guys in a board and a chain, you know? What could they be?
I don't know. Certainly, it can be. It's possible. I'm sure there are other explanations. It could certainly be the footprint of one of the crafts. The crafts can certainly be at altitude and compress a wheat field down like that. That's not a problem. As far as what else it could possibly be, some other prosaic explanation, I really don't know.
And John, I think there was more of a question for you.
Yeah. He said, what group was it that did the genetic alterations? I'd like Bob to answer that because he's the one that read the document, and I just quote from what he said.
All right.
That was supposedly what people call the grays, the rays from Zeta Reticuli.
Okay. Let's just keep moving here. Good morning. You're on the air, Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell, John Lear, and Bob Lazar.
Yes, this question's for Bob Lazar. I was reading an article in the Los Angeles Times for November, and it was regarding a experiment going on approximately 2 miles inside Mount Andreyki in southern Russia with Vladimir Garvin regarding the neutrino. Are you familiar with that at all?
I'm familiar with the neutrino, but not the experiment they're conducting.
Oh, really? Well, I suggest that you get that article. It's in the Los Angeles Times, and very enlightening. I was curious if you were able to make any connection between the neutrino and the Gilliam experiment, but being done by, it's called SAGE, S-A-G-E.
What specifically were the Russians doing?
Well, it's a combination Soviet and U.S. experiment with their. I was hoping you could answer the question, but they're particularly looking for subatomic matter.
All right.
You mean like quarks and things of that sort?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Is that the purpose of one of the purposes of the accelerator in Texas they're building?
Well, that's certainly one of them. it's kind of a useful tool. There are a lot of things you can do with an accelerator on the subatomic level, but certainly one of them is the building blocks, what actually compromises protons and neutrons, and looking at the different flavors, as they say, of quarks and other subatomic particles that only exist in areas of extreme energy and only come into only were in existence at the very creation of the universe. So, in exploring the subatomic world, you're kind of looking back in time.
Bob, again, I'm not a physicist, but I heard also from this astronomer, perhaps a question directed at him earlier, that we are from time to time able to detect neutrinos in the sun here on Earth. Is that correct?
Well, first of all, our neutrino detectors aren't really worth very much. But yeah, neutrinos are not only produced by the sun, but we can detect them. Neutrinos will go clear through the Earth. In fact, it's theorized that a light year of lead, I mean, it's like somewhere on the order of 6 trillion miles of lead, would not stop a neutrino. That's why I was interested to see what experiments the Russians were doing with neutrinos, since it'd be very hard to interact them with any matter.
Well, the further comment was there was worry that they have not been detecting as many neutrinos as they once did, and this was some sort of source of worry.
Well, neutrinos really don't do anything. That's I would find it difficult for it to be a source of worry.
Would you think there would be something approximating miniature black holes? Would such a thing exist, Bob?
Oh, I would think that's certainly possible. You know, remnants of a collapsed star, like any black hole is theorized to come from. Certainly there can be a small one. In fact, one of the explanations for what happened in where was that in Russia? In Tunguska, I think it's pronounced.
Oh, yes.
That was one of the theories, that a small black hole collided there. A piece of antimatter landed there. They had all kinds of explanations for that.
Would the damage done there fit what would probably occur were we to ever collide with a black hole collide with us? Would be more.
It would have to be very small. And who knows what happens when you collide with a black hole? That's the only problem. As far as the antimatter explanation, I think they've almost ruled that out, because there would be some residual byproducts of that reaction that could probably still be detected today. But there again, it's an after the fact. It was a long time ago. I think it was in 1918, maybe 1930. Boy, that date just slips my mind.
Fascinating. Line 3 in Las Vegas, you're on the air coast to coast with the group here. Good morning, Las Vegas, line 3. I guess not, gentlemen. Las Vegas, line 1, you're on the air.
My question is directed to Mr. Lear, and it has to do with the way the aliens communicate. I had an experience many years ago where I received a message. It was a wordless knowing. You had Roy Masters as a guest, and I've heard him speak of that. The only way I can describe it, it's a wordless knowing.
A wordless knowing might be described as intuition.
Well, I always thought it was a message from either the Creator or the Savior or a guardian angel. However, just listening to this program tonight, I think possibly it could be an alien, because they communicate telepathically. And that's, I think, what this was. And by the way, it was a kind and helpful knowledge. I was following a wrong lifestyle, and after I got that wordless knowing and that message, I changed that lifestyle.
All right. Thank you very much for the call. John, is that their manner of communication?
That's my understanding, but it is mental telepathy. As difficult as that is to believe, that's the way it works.
Mental telepathy. Any basis for scientific belief in mental telepathy or the possibility of it, Bob?
I imagine it's possible, but that's about all that I'm going to say about that.
Well, okay, but you're a physicist, and if mental telepathy were possible, what would be the form of energy that it might utilize or could even possibly utilize?
I don't know. That's why I, really didn't comment much further on it. There really
is no appearance.
There have been people that have claim. It's strange because I just had this discussion today with somebody about remote viewing, people with telekinesis,
Yes.
things of that sort. As far as telekinesis, there have been several people that have claimed they can do it. No one has ever been proven to be telekinetic.
Then there is no truth to the rumor that there were Russian experiments in that area and videotape of it.
The videotapes were proven false.
Oh, they were.
Yeah. As far as other, I personally believe that remote viewing exists because I saw an experiment done. Taken that as being whatever form of energy would be used for communication, that person was put in a Faraday shield, was essentially as a grounded screen, and was shielded in several other ways, and there was also electromagnetic noise induced to kind of scramble any possible signal. The bottom line was, however they could see in another area, nothing affected it. So it's obviously, there again, something we know very little about, and you really can't comment on it until our knowledge base increases about that.
All right. Wildcard line 3, you're on the air, coast to coast AM with the group.
Good morning. I didn't expect you to get me so quick.
Well, there you are. Where are you?
I'm in Phoenix, and I'm got you on KKOB out of Albuquerque.
Albuquerque, yes, sir.
I want to direct one question to John. And Bob, by the way, thanks for staying on. John, last August, you were talking about the military building some tunnels, kind of crisscrossing the country from white sands to NORAD and so on and so forth. I believe the technology and everything is there, but, just give me, in your wild imagination, what do you think they did with the debris? How did they hide that?
All right, thank you. It's a good question. If you dig tunnels, you end up with a lot of dirt.
That's been asked several times, and when they dug the supposed base at Dulce, I heard that they took the dirt and put it 80 miles away so that there wouldn't be any debris that would let you see if there was something built there. Apparently, according to this article that I said on the last program in Omni Magazine, 1983, and I forget what the month was, apparently that tunnel digger either compacts it or destroys it or turns it into some other form where they don't have to dump it somewhere else.
All right. When I was a youngster, the man who trained me in amateur radio, got me introduced to amateur radio, was himself a physicist. He was of Polish extraction. And he was working on obtaining a nuclear reaction or a reaction of some sort from materials other than uranium. Would this be possible, Bob?
A nuclear reaction?
Well, a reaction, in other words, trying to release the energy from materials other than uranium in the same fashion that uranium releases energy.
Well, then that's a nuclear reaction.
Yeah. Yes.
You can take any element for that matter and involve it in a nuclear reaction. And you look at the sun. It's a fusion reaction. It's not a fission reaction, but that's taking hydrogen and just squeezing it together, essentially, and producing tremendous amounts of nuclear power and helium as its exhaust. This is the technology that we're striving to manufacture. This would be a perfect energy source. We can get hydrogen out of the water in the ocean, and essentially the only exhaust would be helium. It wouldn't be radioactive debris or anything along those lines. There are some stars that use a carbon-nitrogen cycle that involve carbon and nitrogen and helium and other form of nuclear reaction. But these things take tremendous amounts of power to initiate. Even the easiest one to start, I believe you have to hold at 10 million degrees Celsius for several seconds just to initiate it. And we've been trying to do that for about 70 years now. And, we just can't produce that much temperature and contain it in a small area.
And sustain it. I think they've produced some pretty high temperatures instantaneously, haven't they?
Yeah, they have. They have had
some recent English experiments
in there and different technologies, trying laser fusion in the tokamak reactors, but no one's been able to hold it long enough, because if you do hold it long enough, the reaction becomes self-sustaining as long as it's fed hydrogen.
Uh-huh. Have you not experimented with a hydrogen-powered automobile? In fact, you had one, didn't you, Bob?
I built one several years ago. I had a 1978 Trans Am, and I converted that to run on hydrogen. In fact, entered an alternate fuel contest, and I won. I drove from Woodland Hills, California, to Kitt Peak, Arizona, the observatory there, on a single tank.
Well, then why aren't you up hobnobbing it with the big three and being wined and dined? And, in other words, why didn't they grab it and produce it?
Well, again, this is no phenomenal technology. The conversion is very similar to that of converting a car to run on propane. Hydrogen's a flammable gas. A car will run on any flammable gas. The only problems were some corrections in the timing. Actually, there's a few other because hydrogen burns much faster and would tend to detonate. The tricky part is storing it. Most hydrogen cars have stored it in a liquid form, which is very dangerous, explosive, and it's cryogenic. It's very cold and it boils off. And it can only be stored at a certain density. Other people have stored it in gas form, which is a less density, requires more stops to refill. Again, it's dangerous. There's another way to do it, and that's to chemically store it in a material called a hydride. And this is a substance that acts like a sponge. A sponge soaks up water. A hydride is a chemical that soaks up hydrogen, and once it's locked into it chemically, it's virtually non-flammable. You can get a car carrying a tank full of gas would be much more dangerous. And the way you get it out is you use either the exhaust or radiator water to warm the hydride and evolve the hydrogen. The only problem here was that these hydrides, or the amount of hydride I used in my car, it's reusable. You can refill it with hydrogen and so on. Ran about $15,000.
Oh.
And we didn't know what the lifetime of it was. But there were several corporations doing research in there. One of them is a big one called Billings Energy Corporation. I don't remember where they are, but they have several vehicles running on it. It's just not economically practical right now, but it's certainly a viable alternative.
All right. Thanks for the story. I've always wondered about that. Line 2, you're on the air Coast to Coast AM with the group.
Hello, Art, California.
Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Lear and Dr. Lazar.
How are you doing?
Hi.
I
Not
have
doctor, by the way.
Well. Degrees to me mean doctors unless you have a temperature.
I see.
My first question is for Mr. Lear. I'd like where I could get information on that hands-off law regarding intact UFOs, fragments, and the occupants.
Well, I'm glad you asked that because I just pulled that out, thinking that somebody would call. And it is 14 CFR 1211 of the Code of Federal Regulations.
Okay.
And what it says is anyone who sees and approaches a UFO and is able to touch the object may be liable for a $5,000 fine and or a year in prison if he or she does not submit to detention.
Wait a minute. Have you been fined, Bob?
No, I've never heard of this before. What are you reading this from, John?
From the Code of Federal Regulations, 14 CFR 1211. It has to do with touching UFOs.
And it says what if you have touched a UFO?
Yeah. Anybody who sees or approaches a UFO or touches the object may be liable for a $5,000 fine and or a year in prison if he or she does not submit to detention.
See, Bob, just
why submit it to detention?
Well, I was going to say just one more insult.
I have a couple of questions for Mr. Lazar.
Very quickly.
Do you think the recent advances in ceramic metal technology will be used in a Bussard ramjet project? And the last question is, are biometals being developed for use in data storage and retrieval as well as espionage?
All right, thank you. Can you handle that, Bob?
Well, as far as what biometals are being used for, I don't know. I know very little about them. What was the first question?
No, I couldn't possibly regurgitate that.
Should have answered that one first because I knew the answer to that one.
Oh, you had that one. Well, darn. All right.
Think about it.
Listen, folks. Bob, I'm only going to request that I have you for about 7 more minutes, if I can have you that long. And then we'll do the last hour with John. Bob, it's been such an honor. Both of you stand by for a second. And we'll do that, and we'll do this, and we'll get it all handled and be right back. You're listening to the CBC and
or enjoy a wine margarita.
A moment to get a plug-in for where to get Coast
Santa Fe, New Mexico.
In a moment. Good morning. You're on the air Coast to Coast AM with what I now call the group. Where are you calling from, please?
Thank you, Art. I'm calling from Santa Fe, New Mexico.
New Mexico, okay.
This is indeed an honor and a pleasure.
I had the opportunity to catch John and Bob in August when they were on the air. And listening to that show gave me shivers for a couple reasons. In 1989, I had an experience in the mountains of New Mexico, which after viewing some objects in the sky, I started to write down some things in the following days. One of the things that I drew was something like a sphere with almost an ethereal ring around it or a field around it, and wrote down it had an aspect of folding and bending space. I wrote down 7 other aspects, and then when I listened to your show in August, and Bob Lazar, I ordered your tape immediately after that, and it put shivers and chills through me.
All right, this is the first time Bob's ever been on the air with me that I'm aware of, anyway. But indeed, John was here and talked about Bob's.
Well, there was another gentleman with John.
Yes, that's right.
With the imaging program.
That's right, with NASA, I believe.
Yeah, and anyway, one of the aspects that I wanted to...
then you put in.
Okay, well, thank you for the program.
Right,
Enjoy it.
Thank you very much for the call, and good morning. And line 1, you're on the air Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell and John Lear. Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Lear, I have 2 or 3 questions for you. You were talking about time travel a little while ago, and you mentioned it also on the last program that they actually have conducted successful experiments.
What was the question? Somebody has conducted something.
Yeah, on your last program, you indicated that
it may not have been anybody from this Earth.
Well, that's fine. My question, though, is are you familiar with the Rainbow Project, the Montauk Project, and the Phoenix Project?
Just vaguely. Is that the stuff that Al Bielek talks about?
Exactly, yeah, the Philadelphia experiment. Now, what I wanted to I've been reading these books talking about that, and the things are just so fantastic in there that he traveled 40 years into the future from 1943 to 1983 and then back again to 43. And this is all a result of attempts to make a battleship or a destroyer, I guess it was, invisible, the USS Ulysses. And as a result, not only did it become invisible, but it went through time and space. And so I was wondering what your opinion on that is, or if you have one at all on his credibility.
All right, thank you.
I'm not inclined to believe it. I try to stick to kind of nuts and bolts and things that I can see and stuff that Bob's told me, and I just don't. I know Al, and I haven't talked to him very much about that, but I just don't believe it.
All right. First time caller line, you're on the air Coast to Coast AM with John Lear and Art Bell. Good morning.
Hi. I have 2 questions.
All right.
The first was, you mentioned something about when you die, your soul goes to heaven, and the aliens... no, I'm sorry. When you die, the aliens take your soul to another planet?
No, no, see, how did you hear all that? John, tell them what you know about souls and containers and such.
You know, it's just theory that supposedly the aliens refer to us in containers. Now, if by saying containers they mean that we contain the soul, then obviously they're doing experiments with the soul. And when you die, supposedly they collect the soul and they put it in another container. And I don't know that to be true.
Well, see, I mean, I did hear you say that. Is there anything I can read about that?
Pardon?
Is there anybody who's written anything good about this, John?
Whitley Strieber discusses that.
Whitney who?
In his books.
How do you spell his last name?
Strieber. S-T-R.
Strieber. Listen, sir, he'll spell it for you.
S-T-R-E-I-B-E-R. Whitley Strieber. And he's written 2 or 3 books.
Okay, the other question was, is there any... I know this is all speculation and stuff, but is there any speculation about there being like an alien culture that's non-violent with no state structure?
I don't know anything about that.
You never heard anybody talk about that?
Right, nor have I. Is that it, sir?
Yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you. John, you just have to wonder where some of this stuff comes from.
Yeah.
All right, let me see here. Wildcard line 3, you're on the air Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell and John Lear. Hi.
Good morning, Art and John. A very entertaining show.
Thank you. Where are you calling from?
This is Barry in
Phoenix. Okay, Barry.
Mr. Lear.
Yes.
Do you agree that there's much CIA disinformation about UFOs?
Yeah, there is a lot of disinformation.
Pardon me?
There is a lot of disinformation.
Well, you mentioned the Brentwaters event in England.
Bentwaters.
Is there any possibility that that could have been staged? And the reason I ask that is because the troops that were called out to witness that were all told not to take any arms.
Yes.
They were all told to leave their arms in their barracks.
Yes, it's
And the
very possible it was staged.
that took them out to the spot that they were going to witness, they all were unarmed. And the only reason I can think of this is that it was a staged event.
Well, it was a staged event, but the question is who staged it?
Probably the CIA.
Well, it's possible.
Oh, isn't that something? All right, thank you. So some of all this could be, in a sense, more intentional disinformation, John.
Well, when I say they staged it, I mean they staged it with real. Well, I'm not going to get to that.
I get. Let me get into it a little bit. In other words, you can take something that is a basic truth, like the appearance of UFOs and this and all the rest of it, and you can stretch it to an absurdity. And when you do, you discredit all that goes before it. Really.
Yeah. Essentially, that's it.
All right. Let's keep moving here. Good morning. You're on the air, Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell and John Lear. Where are you calling from, please?
From Scottsdale again, Art. I have one more point. And
no, sir. I'm sorry. We don't allow a callback on these shows, but I appreciate the attempt. Line 2, your turn.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a comment and a couple of questions. I think interstellar or extraterrestrial travel, I think time is against us. Is that right or not? Against us or anybody else? The time it takes.
Oh, well, yes. With conventional means of transportation, sublight, that would, of course, be correct.
I'm talking about light year and even faster.
Uh-huh.
And another thing is, what would a tablespoon of matter from a black hole weigh? And
more than you can imagine, and certainly more than it would be for you to be able to get the spoon then to your mouth.
Right. And is there a true explanation on the term gravity? Can anybody really explain it?
That actually is a very good question. What the hell is gravity, John?
Well, not being a physicist, I don't know. But according to Bob, there's two forms of gravity, gravity A and gravity B. Gravity A is the small atomic force, and gravity B is the large force, like the Earth and the planets in orbit around the sun.
All right. Very good. Let's see. First-time caller line. You're on the air, Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell and John Lear. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Where are you calling us from?
I'm calling from Fresno, California.
All right. John Lear's listening. What is your question?
Well, my husband years ago met Mr. Lear's father in Reno.
Yes.
And my question is, could he review again about the helicopters and the men coming in black uniforms? Kind of review that again. I heard that before, and I didn't get all of it.
I understand. John, I've seen black helicopters. No markings. We've talked about that before. What are they?
I don't know. There's plenty of them around. Apparently, there's a lot of UFO incidents in which black helicopters appear with men dressed in black jumpsuits. Whether they're ours or theirs, I don't know. There's also appearances of helicopters that are absolutely noiseless, like they were just images, like they weren't really helicopters at all.
Well, exactly. The ones that I've heard are not quite silent, but not far from it, and you don't hear them very long. The moment they're gone a little bit, they are silent.
I just heard of some of our helicopters that are very, very quiet.
All right. Hold on right.
All right, guys, we're going to pause it right there. We're like 5 minutes short of the break, but they're taking a break, so why not? New speakers, if you guys want to talk, and if anybody wants to come up and speak, you're more than welcome to, whether you believe in Bob's story or not. You know, we want to hear what everybody has to say. Want to know your theories, and yeah, you'll be able to get a full thought out, no interrupting or anything. That's a big thing with me. So everybody will get a chance, you know, if you want to speak, to say what you want to say. So Kevin and Tony. Thanks for coming up, guys. And the floor is yours.
Hey man, I'm glad you're doing this. I enjoy listening to old Coast to Coast. Kind of brings back a lot of memories and brings back the topics and how some of these were addressed. A lot of people bring up some of these ideas and like they're brand new, and people forget that a lot of these are ancient topics. A lot of these ideas were fresh decades ago, and we forget about how they impacted us way back then. And Bob Lazar has always been somebody that I put a lot of stock in. If you grew up listening to the whole thing unravel, and if you were around when Bob Lazar came out and you were paying attention to what was going on in the media and how things were in the UFO community, you you realize what an impact Bob Lazar had on the scene. What was rumored, what was in the press, what was in the movies, what everything was going on before Bob Lazar came out, and then what was taken as reality after Bob Lazar had his impact, or two big different things. And looking back at him, people can take a lot of shots, throw a lot of rocks at glass and stuff like that. But back in the day, it was a whole different situation. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. And could you, because I think you just came in the past 20 or 30 minutes, if you want to take a look at the information that, like the research that I did, that is the reason that I started the space, I would love to know what your opinion is on it. And it's up in the nest. I know, guys, I posted a lot of stuff up in the nest. Like I have a huge PDF library, like massive, and I was posting some of my favorite Lazar stuff out of my library. So that's what all those collages are. And the images, if you download them, they're fairly large. So you should be able to download them and then zoom in if you're on desktop. If you're on your phone, you should be able, I think, to down, just like finger zoom or whatever. But yeah, some of my favorite stuff up there, like a Jacques Vallée paper. But Kevin, if you go back to, it's pretty far back, but there's a where I did a retweet of a infographic that I created because I'm Grider. This is my alt account that I do, my comedy alt. Like I'm right now, I'm making fun of like the whole whistleblower thing, but I use this, because sometimes my Grider account is glitchy. I don't know. It's not a conspiracy. It's just X is shitty. But if you go back and look at that retweet, the infographic, I would love to know what you think about it. And Tony, what's up, man? I don't think I've ever talked to you before. You're new to UFO Twitter spaces, I think, but welcome, man. And what are your thoughts? Tony might have fallen asleep. All right. Well, anybody else want to come up? Anybody want to speak? Artisan Tony, come on, man. I know you got an opinion. Come up and tell us about. Come on, come up and lay it down for us, man. We need some. Down there we got Artisan Tony, guys. He's got the People I Find Interesting podcast. All right, it's a phenomenal platform. He's had everybody from Elizondo to Jack Surfati. He just had on recently. He's had on everybody. I mean, he's had on people like UFO Shane, Keemstar. I mean, Artisan Tony, he's like the bedrock upon which, the front porch of the house that ufology is. That's a horrible fucking analogy. But anyways, you know what I'm saying? Like he's Artisan Tony, all right? So check him out. Click on his profile. He's probably got a link. People I find interesting. Tony, are you there? Tony Dove, Tony up on the speaker panel. What's up, man? Hello. He's probably taking a nap. But tonight, okay, so today for UFO Twitter week, I don't have the schedule pulled up. Tomorrow night, unfortunately, guys, the Ashton Forbes space got canceled. I'm really just heartbroken over it. I'm gonna probably need to get some grief therapy about. I mean, it's really just really traumatized. I mean, I was really looking forward to hearing about Diego Garcia and all the other theories that make up the MH370. I mean, I was really looking forward to it to close out UFO Twitter week. But if you are a fan of bullshit, which if you were going to go listen to that space, and you like Ashton Forbes, you're probably a fan of bullshit. So tomorrow night at 10 p.m. we've got the Disinformation UFO Research Group space, where we will be going over continuing our deep dive into the aviary and 1980s disinformation operations surrounding ufology, surrounding people like Bill Moore. Right now, we're kind of on an aviary, Doty, AFOSI kick, trying to find like who the Falcon was. Last week, we listened to a Greg Bishop podcasts. He's the guy who wrote literally the book on like the Benowitz affair. Project Beta was the name of the book. Greg Bishop. If you have Kindle, it's free. If you have the Kindle Unlimited, fantastic book. I literally finished it in like one sitting. I sat there for like 8 hours and finished. It's awesome. It's so good. Project Beta, Greg Bishop. No, I'm not affiliated with him. I would love to know him, but I don't. But we listened to an interview. I think tomorrow night we're going to listen to the Doty, Greg Bishop, Art Bell episode. I think we're going to listen to like an hour and a half of it, and then discuss. Usually we do like an hour well, last week we did an hour and a half listen, and then like an hour and a half where we discuss. But it's just kind of like the UFO research group. We're going to do it it's me and UFO Mean Face. And it'll be every Sunday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, and basically it's a drama free, no derailing, we're not, no tolerance, like stay on subject, stay on topic, conversations where we actually kind of reach like a group understanding, where we actually get somewhere, not where it's like 11 different people having 11 different points made. It's focusing on, a certain, specific, area of ufology. And right now we're doing it, we're just focusing on the disinformation that overall, like our theory that we're trying to investigate is the theory that myself and UFO Mean Face have currently, is basically that like modern ufology, a lot of the lore that makes up like the foundation for ufology, everything from Roswell to Serpo to all that, is the work of a small group of people, from the 80s, some of which you guys are going to be familiar with, based off of just like the legends of Doty and stuff like that. Bill Moore, Stanton Friedman could be involved. I mean, we don't know yet who we think is involved, but we have a general idea. So it'll be the second space tomorrow night, so you won't be missing a whole lot. We're still in the early stages of like this group kind of investigation. So we would love to have anybody join. And yeah, there's no stupid questions. Like we're all like, nobody really knows what the truth is, about this stuff. We're all kind of brand new, investigating it. Because the thing about disinformation and about like looking back in like ufology history is that the moment you think that you know what the truth is about something, it's like, you come across another piece of information that makes you realize that you don't know a damn thing about it. It's like trying, yeah. But all right, we got two speakers, Artist and Tony, and then we'll go to the Russian letter. Okay, so Dennis Antic will be after Artist and Tony. And thanks for coming up.
Hey, sorry about that. Accidentally joined on desktop and it was glitching. I thought it was funny. I caught the tail end of the Coast to Coast, with John Lear. I thought it was funny that Art Bell was sort of running. What would you call it? Anyway, you know how many times he's had conspiracy theorists on his show, right? Well, it was like he was running some kind of screen for John Lear, because he had several people that came up with some weird questions, right? And he's like, "Oh, we're not doing that on this show," kind of thing. And I thought that was just kind of funny. I don't know why certain things strike me. I'm kind of weird.
Yeah, man. And one thing is that they all live in the same. They like Art Bell lived in Pahrump, which is like right outside of Vegas. It's like all these guys live near each other. I'm sure that they. In fact, I'm sure. Well, no, I think Bob Lazar was calling in, but I think John Lear was actually in the studio during this interview. In fact, he definitely was. Pahrump, it's a short drive away from Vegas, but yeah, man. Absolutely. I think there was, and then of course Art Bell kept bringing up the tapes, like, oh, maybe you want to take this opportunity to talk about the tape, the Bob Lazar tape, which was a $29.99 VHS tape that Bob sold out of the back of like UFO magazines, and made a lot of money off of it. It was extremely popular. You can find it for free on YouTube. I'll post a link to it up in the nest while we're listening to Dennis talk. And Dennis, what's up, man?
Yeah, thank you. Greetings from Hamburg, from Europe. Greetings. I want to say to whole American people, because this is American space, or I'm wrong, or is this American space?
We're consider ourselves more of we're an international community of
Okay.
mostly Americans, but I mean, hey, you're more than welcome, man. Like this is, yeah.
Thank you.
Tell us what you
Thank
think about
you.
Bob Lazar.
Your hospitality, man. I am grateful for the chance that I can say that this humanity, what we have see today, it's not at all funny. The people kill each other because they are other religion. This is not at all funny for nobody. If somebody find this world in this moment funny, this planet Earth, our planet Earth,
Okay,
if they somebody
I absolutely hear you. Hey, hold on. All right, so we're talking about Bob Lazar. Like, I absolutely, dude. Yeah, the world sucks. It's a dark, miserable shithole. All right, but that's why we're in this space right now to kind of. That's why we like ufology, UFOs. Is to kind of bring ourselves out to kind of a distraction from like how shitty life is. Do you understand? This is a Bob Lazar space. This isn't like a doom and gloom space. Do you know who Bob Lazar is? UFOs. Do you have something to talk to about that? Or is this like a something else?
something else. I don't know who is Bob Lazar, and I don't know.
Yes.
I
Sorry,
am
Dennis.
calling
Sorry, man.
from
Like,
Europe. Sorry, man.
I
Can
understand. I
okay,
understand.
okay.
There's plenty of other
Do
spaces
you
that
think
would love
that
to
you are
hear
the onlyest
what you
man
have to
in
say.
this world? American people, you are
Yeah, I
only
mean,
people in this
yeah,
planet.
like,
Okay, okay,
yeah, we're horrible.
okay.
Like, I know. Yeah, see ya.
Wasn't
I know. We're so
wasn't
bad.
Bob Lazar KGB
All
or
right.
something?
I don't know. Like for anybody that thinks that I was just being a dick to that guy, like those people like there's people like that go around and they do that in every space and like yeah, the world sucks. Yeah, like Europe right now is. I mean, anyways, back to Bob Lazar. Like what do you like? What just brings me down? Like when you're like, what do you want me to do? KGB. I don't know, Tony. Like, what's your thoughts? Or Kevin, man, what's your Did you have a chance to look at that at the infographic? What are your thoughts? Like on what I compiled. Do you believe it or
I went back and read the Dreamland. Is that the one you're referring to?
no? All right. So I'll reshare it to the space, and it'll be so. Give me a minute. We'll go back to Tony, and maybe he can talk to us about the KGB angle, and give it about 30 seconds, and then it should be the first slot up in the pill. I guess is the thing up above us that on his speakers can share. Yeah. So go back to Tony. Tony, tell us about the just angle, man. I want to, or just make something up. Like,
No, I just
just go with it.
I
All
thought
right.
it was funny how you handled that. There are a couple of people that do that. They'll go into every space and start talking about something. But did you see what I posted in the nest about the CFR? They had mentioned earlier about the regulations on touching, being exposed to UFOs or whatever. I thought that was funny. I thought it was fake, and then I went and looked it up, and it had. I think it's probably been what do you call it? Closeted. What does it call it when they daylight or when a CFR ends or something? But it was actually a thing at one time. I think it's like from '69 to '77. I think it said.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There were a lot of things that were closeted, I guess, in '69 back then. It's not as acceptable. But yeah, Kevin, check the first slot up there. Hey, man, so like, dude, I gotta ask, like, who's your next guest, Tony? Like, I mean, dude, you just had Sir Fadi on a couple of weeks ago. Like, how are you gonna follow this up,
That's
brother?
what I was going to say about John Lear. When you said he was in the studio, it made perfect sense because he's kind of like Jack Sarfati. He doesn't take any BS, and he'll actually get on to you. If well, from all the interviews I've seen him in, he doesn't. He has a strict belief system, and he doesn't really. There's nothing. You know what I mean? And Jack Sarfati's kind of like that. And I had to kind of tiptoe. I didn't tiptoe, but my whole goal with. Jack Sarfati's interview was just to get out of it without being called an idiot or it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, like you're like the neutral podcast. Like, I'm saying? Like you play it cool, man. You
Well,
never, you keep your opinions. But hey, I got a great idea. You know what? Okay, so my sister, she tricked me to come down and take care of her house when she went to Vegas like Tuesday. I didn't know there was a hurricane coming because I don't pay attention to the news. So she tricked me to come down here and take care of the house, and I get down here and find out there's a hurricane coming. But anyways, I'm on my way back up, man. I'm gonna stop in Chattanooga, could do a pi-fi live
that would be
interview,
cool.
I'm saying, on the side of the
That'd
mountain,
be
me and
cool.
you.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, get maybe a bottle of whiskey. I haven't drank in 10 years, but we get drunk, and like shoot shit, film it. It'll be great. That'll be my face reveal. I mean,
Well, there's a
which
guy up
I don't
here.
know,
One of my
it's not going to
friends,
mean a whole lot.
my friends has the first licensed moonshine distillery. He finally went legal. I joke with him. He finally went legal. He's just down the street from me, but I don't drink this stuff, to be honest with you. I can't. But yeah, I can get you some of
All
that.
right. Yeah.
But no, I don't know if I should talk about this or not. 'Cause last time I talked about another interview I got.
Don't talk about it.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Then don't do
Jesus,
it.
thank you. You were asking me what's coming up, and I was going to say, but I better.
Oh no. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. No. Like who's coming up, man? Like nobody's gonna trick you. It's just me, Kevin, and you up here. Like nobody's gonna, you know. No, seriously. Like who's coming up? This is a perfect time to advertise.
Well, I'm talking to Dave Rossi about next week, and then Big Homie at some point.
Nice,
I
dude.
just I like people.
Big Homie.
You know, it's kind of funny. People gave me a hard time for interviewing, Jack Sarfati. I like Jack. I think he's kind of cool. He's real smooth. He's smart. He's got that suave European thing going on. I mean, how can you not like the guy? And look at Big Homie. Look how cool. He's just a cool guy. Look how smooth. He reminds me of, he has like Charles Barkley mannerisms. He's just that kind of cool player guy.
He's a fantastic storyteller. Absolutely. The guy's highly entertaining. I look forward to that interview, dude. Like, yeah. I mean, you're like, cause you're kind of my big homie in life, say like, who's my big homie? It's Artisan Tony. So like having two of the biggest big homies, like in one spot, I mean, my brain might explode, watching it. I don't know, man. We're gonna handle
actually inspired me to ask him. It was kind of funny. But yeah, I hope I don't jinx it. It seems like
that's what I live to do is inspire you.
I'm really
Tony.
sensitive now about jinxing these interviews. But
I don't know. Just I mean, all I got to say is like be careful, because there's some I don't know, vetted, and I mean, I'm saying like there's lots of drama surrounding it. So just my advice would be to kind of go into the bunker, like from this point on. I wouldn't talk about it again. Lay low, brother. All right, lay low. All right, because other people are gonna try to trip you up. I'm not, because I'm because I'm me and you're you. I can't have you pissed at me, because then I have nobody to argue with. Like I'm an old couple.
Get mad at you.
I'm saying like you're my favorite person to argue with. I mean, I'm mad at you about half the time.
I know, but I can't. It's funny because
I
I can't get mad at you, and I can't. I have a hard time getting mad at anybody.
I
just
know. I
like
love
having
you
a
too,
good
man.
time.
I mean, really, it's.
I don't understand.
I mean, so do I.
whole...
Sometimes I think like, man, maybe I don't know. Maybe it's like we could I don't know, start our own ufology movement, Artisan Tony and Grider movement.
Two skeptics in a.
All right, man. We got like a room full of people right now. They don't want to hear about this.
Thanks.
You know what I'm saying? They want to hear about your plans for Dave Rossi. All right, can you tell us who Dave Rossi is? Not everybody may know. Give us the Dave Rossi intro.
Dave Rossi was a friend of mine he is a friend of mine of about, 12 years. He used to comment on my early videos, on YouTube, and I didn't know anything about him, and I kind of slowly learned more about him. He's kind of a polymath, and, say what you want to say about him, but I think he's gotten involved with some, exotic research. And for a while, he kind of disappeared, like he had gone off, and like some of these others do. Some of these smart people will get, recruited, and they'll have to sign NDAs, and they can't get on social media. So you think they've disappeared, and he finally reappeared, and now hopefully I can get him on the show, and he can talk about some things. I don't know if I don't think NDAs expire that quick, but maybe he can talk about something related. I know I don't associate.
Do you know, is he still like in business with Four Orbs? What's his name?
Yeah, I got myself kind of in trouble a little bit early on about that with Dave. I thought that's why he wasn't answering my email. I finally just let it go, and you got to,
it's a good idea. We should probably do that right now. Actually, I forgot that I'm on your side about this.
Yeah.
All right.
But
yeah, that's good. It's good, man. Like I hope that dude, I
don't associate.
Hi-Fi's coming back, man.
I don't associate them with each other in my mind. Like
no,
Dave
not
Rossi's
at all.
his
Two
own
different
self.
people.
He's a good guy. He's a smart guy. He would be the guy who could actually build something if there was something to. And then,
absolutely,
he's not just anyway. I'll be quiet now.
You guys heard it here first, all right? Dave Rossi is bringing us over unit. He's going to be the one, and I believe, dude, Dave Rossi is a smart guy's a genius, basically. Kevin, what do you think about what do you think about that? About the information in that infographic, man?
Yeah, I read it.
What do you think?
I read it when you posted it, and I did want to talk to you about that, and now I understand what you were getting at. Well, I do want to understand what you're getting at because when you posted it, did you put it up there to say that Bob was kind of like borrowing from Fechter's writings and stuff like that, or did you put it up there to say that they kind of mirror each?
I'm not I'm not pushing any specific conclusion. I think there's probably I think three different possibility there's three different conclusions that I can imagine being like the possible explanations of
What?
this. I don't know. Like, what do you think? Like, I'm not pushing any. Like, I'm not tied to any conclusions. Like, I'm not. I made I tried to make it as objective as possible the way that I presented that information. I know it was a little bit biased. Obviously the way that I highlighted in it. I mean, it was like it's a bit of a bias baked in. But the only bias that I really intentionally put in was just that I believe that there's something going on. There's something wrong with this story, and that it clearly it's like there's too many parallels, man. There's too many similarities. I mean, it's almost if you replace Nazi technology with UFO technology and then shift the timeline by a couple of decades, the stories are almost identical, right? I mean, it's really hard to explain. And that's George Knapp's father-in-law, and a good friend.
Well, you definitely hit on something here, and it's an interesting parallel to bring out. And I'm using that parallel from your own words there. The correlation is what I was going to say, but parallels. Wow. It is almost like George Knapp was like putting together this story from his research before and putting into I want to bring this back out. And look, Bob, you were in that situation and all this stuff. Let's make this a contemporary story that we can tell and bring this all out. That is one possible situation that we can do here, and that gets me back to what I've been trying to tell my scenario for years, and folks don't want to hear. And that's kind of what I alluded to earlier. Is instead of looking at the exact details of Bob Lazar and trying to tie down the little things about his life and stuff and trying to debunk him that way, simply look at what was known before he came out and then look at what was known after he came out. Look at the revelations we had, look at what changed, look at what came to light and became known as basically everyday knowledge, pre and post, okay? And base that story on pre and post. That's been my thing the whole time, is looking at that, because I was around then, okay? I was of age and understanding when that occurred, and I know how the UFO community went through a transition during that time. People go through this whole thing about, well, this university said this, and this one said this, and Bob said that, and so that way, all of this is a lie. So check it all off, scratch it all off the calendar. This never happened. Okay, well, that's BS. Okay, that's total BS, because these events happened, these scenarios happened. This stuff does exist, and I don't care. If you try to flush the baby with the bathwater, it doesn't work. Okay, so your logic does not stand up by you trying to do that. I trying to look up Dr. Fechter is kind of difficult if you try to bring them up. A lot of these browsers will pop up something and then scratch it right off. If you try to do that, I don't know if you tried to do it. It took me about an hour to really get some good information on the doctor the other day after you posted this, because I wanted to find out more information about him in specifics. And 2 or 3 of the browsers just kept kicking him out. I could see it flash across the screen. Some of the information looked like information I wanted, but then they'd bring up the current ads, and then you went down into the other stuff to dig it up, and it wasn't there anymore. So they didn't just move it down in the rankings; they kicked it clean off the browser, which I thought was made me dig more. There was something going on there. So there's stuff about him that obviously is being withheld by in some kind of secrecy by the government, whoever doing this, trying to keep his name out of the headlines and stuff like that, keep it out of the browsers. But so I think you did some good work here, really do, Grider. I think you did some really good work here and bringing these together and stuff like that. And there's much more to this story than than what we're looking here, and there's more to it. I think you did a good job comparing them, and doing the timeline is like, this to this, this to that, and making some assumptions about how this goes forward. It's more than like Transformers. It's more than meets the eye. There, so you can't really do this without conveying a further meaning to this. It's too much. It's not just coincidence. Now, whether or not Lazar is purposely there for what reasons, I think we know that he was an insider. We know that he was in some of these places. We know that he had stuff going on with these establishments. There's no doubt about that. We know that he had a past with the government. We know that he had a past with these installations, and there's more going on to Bob than just somebody telling a story. So that's way out there. Then you go ahead and you mirror his life with Fechter's story and Fechter's life. And he was a doctor and everything. And as far as a PhD, and his work within the government secret projects and stuff like that goes on for decades. So you can't ignore that. So I think you brought something up that's needs to go on, and it needs to be it needs to be looked at very seriously. And we need to look at Bob Lazar very seriously in a whole new light. And of course, George Knapp. George Knapp needs to be looked at very seriously, and how he ties into both of these guys, and why he ties into both of these guys the way this story is brought out. I don't accuse George Knapp of a bunch of things, but he's tied into to too many people in the government. He's tied into too many politicians. He's tied into the UFO community and the press in ways that are just
Corbell.
No, George Knapp. Oh yeah, Corbell too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying
Yeah,
Corbell, dude. That
in the media, yeah, he's tied into the media and everything else, and as far as Hollywood media, the medium. So yeah, it just gets too muddy and mucky. And George,
it sucks too, because I really want to George Knapp George Knapp and Lazar, they're likable dudes. Like, I would probably be friends with them in real life. It's just really hard to kind of it's just really hard. Like, I don't enjoy making these accusations, man. Like, Bob Lazar still is my favorite ufology story. Even thinking that he's probably lying, like, I still am a fan of his.
Well, I
know that's weird. Like, I'm not looking to debunk him into being vilified. Like, I mean, we don't know. There's layers of complexity. We don't know motivations. I don't pretend to know that I am inside of their heads. Like, who knows why they did it? And by the way, I posted the Fechter documents that I was able to find through archive.org, congressional source records, and a couple of other mentions showing some of the stuff that he did throughout history with dealing with research and particle acceleration. And you can kind of see it's got his last name highlighted within the documents for easy reference. You're right, though. There's not a lot. But then again, the guy died in 2003. That was pre, internet, boom, as far as the way that it is now. Information databases being publicly accessible, much different, time back then. And you can find people that die, but it's much different, yeah, I'm sure that FOIA records, I'm sure that there's a lot of, this guy did everything within the government possible that you could do as a scientist. In that, the guy had a career spanning 60 friggin' years. The guy was literally a legend, an American hero. I'm sure there's plenty of stuff in the National Archives if I was to submit a FOIA. But one thing I do want to stress is please, for God's sakes, if anybody's out there, if this is recorded, please do not harass George Knapp or his wife. Don't just leave them alone. They don't, investigate, but do so without they don't need to. What's done is done, and I extremely want to stress that I do not encourage anybody to contact or do anything to where George Knapp would become aware of what. I don't care if he knows that I'm saying all this, but I'm not doing anything wrong, but just don't, guys, just respect people's privacy. I know that sounds fucking weird what I just said, but what I'm saying, just let him live. What's done is done. There's no need to kind of there's no need to kind of cause any real life problems for George Knapp or his wife. All right, they're people just like us at the time. I'm sure they they were making the decisions that they thought was best for them in life, and who knows what they were thinking they did. If they even did, like the thing is, like, this is we don't even know what they did. Like, I'm not asserting anything other than that there's extremely strong parallel, there's extremely, significant like parallels between these two stories. All right. I'm not claiming with any, certainty, that like I know what happened. I don't. None of us do. Only they know what happened. But so just research, investigate, but do so without interfering with their life, please. Like I beg you, because I just it would really bother me if I found out that like somebody was like calling up, like asking questions 5 times a day. That would really really bother me. Like that would make me feel really really bad. So yeah. But great points, Kevin. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I think you're exactly 100% on everything you just said, and we don't want to start jumping ahead of things because you found a place that we need to investigate, and you brought up lots of points that we need to investigate on. So you've pointed people in the right directions, and there's a whole list of directions to go to. Now, people, we've got so many investigators in the community that can do these things very well, but we don't need to go jump to the conclusion of anything yet. There's no conclusions to get to. So there's also the idea that these two that George saw a parallel in Lazar's life to Fechter's life, and that is why he might have latched onto Lazar. He might have seen that he was doing.
My theory
Go ahead.
My theory is that like okay, and this is a way that they could sorry for those of you that have been in the space the entire time. I know this is the third time I've been over it, but we have more new people than old. So yeah, just let me go over it real quick. So like my personal favorite kind of like possibility theory is that and this also explains how Bob Lazar and Knapp would justify telling this story that wasn't really true, about Bob. Like they could justify this to their families and even themselves, because I mean, like, they're not evil people, like, I mean, not everybody. It's like people aren't as horrible as we like to make them out to be. Like, everybody is, probably more than likely just the same as us. Like, they have the same motivations, the same wants. Like, very few people are like just straight evil. So like I believe that at the time they could justify it by this. All right, so I think it's a strong possibility that like Knapp wanted to tell this story about his father-in-law, a fucking American hero, a legendary physicist. What it is not in that infographic, Kevin, that I have learned since I made that infographic is that in addition to everything that's listed on there, Dr. Fechter also started the physics department at UNLV. Literally founded the department. He also designed the electrical control system that was used to manage the largest particle accelerator in the United States at the time, which I think was in the 60s. This guy was literally a legend. I mean, the guy is just legendary. I mean, a storied career, like just an American hero. A true patriot. Like the man was a true patriot, and that story needs to be told, but you can't. Maybe most of that stuff is probably still classified, right? I'm sure that, or maybe like we calculated up earlier, Dr. Fechter in 1988 would have been 69 years old, and at the end of his career, basically at 69 years old, do you want to become like a media? It's like maybe he just didn't want anything to do with it, and so said, well, hey, well, Bob can tell the story as if it's it. Like, who knows, because Dr. Fechter was alive, and like by alive, I mean he was 81 in 2001 when I saw an interview. If you go to Mystery Wire, that's George Knapp's kind of brand. That's his brand. It's like Mystery Wire. He has a blog, he has a YouTube channel. There's an interview that he did. Just go to Google, type in Dr. Fechter, George Knapp interview, Mystery Wire. It's like a 30-minute interview. It's fucking awesome. I highly recommend it. In fact, we may listen to it if we kind of run out of stuff to talk to at the end of the space. But it's great. The guy clearly, this guy is just, it's so enjoyable to hear this guy talk, because you know that he's seen like the most classified of projects. Like, this guy's been there and done that. But that was 2001, 2 years before Dr. Fector died. And the guy is sharp as a tack. The guy sounds as sharp as, a 20-year-old. You know what I mean? Just, the guy had a sound mind, but that's 2001. That means that he was more than capable of being aware of what was going on with Bob Lazar in like the late 80s. Like, he there's no way that he didn't know. So, like, my question is, though, is like, if Dr. Fector, Knapp's father-in-law, was not active, was not involved in, like, the process of, like, making like the Bob Lazar story, like that whole media campaign. If he wasn't involved in it and like approved of it, then it just doesn't make any sense. But let's say that, uh, you know, even if he didn't know about it, well, afterwards, like, one thing is, like, how did Knapp not have his father-in-law, legendary physicist, vet Bob Lazar, you know, uh, before he came out with the story, right? Let's just look at it. Let's say that, okay, we're trying to prove that, like, Knapp was innocent. Okay, Knapp didn't know anything about it. Like, he legitimately, let's believe their story. Okay, going by their story, how did you not, like, ask your father-in-law, your buddy who you were friends with before he was your father-in-law? How did you not ask him to vet the story about, that Bob was telling? And keep in mind, Dr. Fector was a manager. He was like a consultant advisor for Los Alamos Labs. It's the same laboratory that Bob claimed to be a physicist for. Like, how, I mean, he could have like vetted the story right then, but yet nobody has ever heard about Dr. Fector, say any commentary on the Bob Lazar story. It just doesn't add up. Like, it is as far as, I mean, it's kind of it's kind of a smoking gun. Like, you know, the I mean, you could look at it like that. It's like, logically, it doesn't make any sense that this is. I mean, I thought that it was somebody playing a joke at first. Like, I thought, man, like, somebody's playing a joke on me. I don't know how. Like, this information, I mean, it's too, like, on the nose, you know.
And you just keep adding on to it. You just keep adding on. You're hitting on things, and look, if if Knapp tried to bring out information about Fector, knowing that he was going to bring flack down on him, he was going to bring flack down on George's wife and his own family. So he would not want to bring out any kind of information and stuff like that where the government's going to hit down on his own family and himself. So look, you got Bob Lazar following the same type of path. Maybe Lazar was a government implant. Who knows? And you know, sometimes these guys go and they want to become, I don't want to say squealers, but they want to become people that are informers, whistleblowers. So who else? You don't want to bring flack down on the doctor, so you're going to bring somebody else to expose some of the story and tell about what's going on. And yeah, I mean, it's such an incredible story you pulled out here. Excellent job. Excellent job. You've got an entire series. You got an entire web series here. You could do 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not looking for. Thank you, Like, thanks, Kevin. Like, dude, I really like. I'm not gonna act coy, man. Like, it feels good. Like, it always feels good. Like, I mean, this is the first time I've had something like this based off of my research. Like, dude, it's like I spent so much time. I spent so much time this year. Since my divorce. Like, this is all that I've done is like researched and then like slept. That's about it. Into like ufology. So, like, thank you. Like, it does feel good, man. But like, I'm happy with like spaces. Like, I'm happy with just like sharing the information and having like a discussion. But like, dude, it's like it's so sensitive though. Like, I don't even want to make like a YouTube video about this because I feel like it would put too much. Like, it would just open up. Like, dude, I don't want Knapp and like his wife to be harassed. And I know that that's probably, like, if this got out and if more people, that's what. Dude, it's like, I mean, it's like, maybe I've even like handled it a little bit incorrectly, like, so far. Like, I don't know, I don't know, could I have handled it better? Like, how? Like, I don't know, maybe I could have approached Knapp, but like, Corbell doesn't like me because I fucking debunk. I mean, I just got done doing this same thing to Corbell about 29 Palms, where like I went on Steve Cambion, and I debated this guy named Arthur about 29 Palms, and I uncovered like the primary witness from the 29 Palms case, like, basically telling the truth about the 29 Palms being flares a year before Corbell got a hold of the primary witness and had him on his show. And then like the primary witness said something completely, said what Corbell wanted him to. So like I went on Steve Canby and I made a debunk video. I'll put it up in the nest, hell, fuck it now. But like basically I proved that like what like we've all assumed, what people have like said, it's not been a secret that everybody has assumed that Corbell, has been embellishing at the very least, if not outright fabricating, the source of like, the videos and just the entire story surrounding like the way that he conducts investigations. And like we have the evidence now, of like the way that he manipulates these young military members into kind of saying what he wants them to say to make the story over the cases like the Jellyfish UAP, like 29 Palms, seem more anomalous when in reality, in the case of 29 Palms, this Marine knew damn well that they were flares and like said as much, but was wooed by Corbell, talking. Oh, dude, it's crazy. Like you got to watch the video, Kevin, if you haven't seen it. Like, where I compare and contrast, like it's like 9 minutes. Like, I would love for you to watch it, and that goes for anybody out there. Please, like, yeah, because like it's about as damning as like this could, in fact, it's more on the nose damning. Like it's more blatantly because like I absolutely believe that like I will make the assertion that Corbell was being disingenuous and being dishonest. Like it is blatantly on the nose. But just the way that he like, would text this like young Marine witness and like promise that he was going to be in a Netflix documentary, that he was going to go testify in front of Congress, all right, in front of like congressmen, wooing this young 20-year-old Marine veteran into changing. It's like, well, change your story and you get to be in my Netflix documentary. And to hear this Marine talking about how often Corbell would text him, where Corbell was texting him so much that like Corbell did like Corbell told him like, oh, well, if you, like if I'm texting you too much, then like just tell me and I'll stop. Like the line that I used in like eighth grade, like when texting my, eighth grade girlfriend too much, like, it's just the entire thing is weird, and it's Corbell. Like I tried to keep Nap out of it, and I did. Like I didn't talk about Nap at all when I went on Cambian or when I made the video. I kept it on Corbell. But now it's like with this, man, it's God. Like, is there anybody that we can trust? Like, is there anybody out there that like is not, full of shit? That is not grifting? Like, is there any honest? Like, is there anybody honest out there? Like, as far as any celebrity, but anybody? I mean, I don't know. Like, even Mick West is like dishonest sometimes. Like, lets his bias kind of like. I mean, and I'm a big fan of Mick West, but even he, it's like sometimes, it's like it just seems like nobody, like everybody's kind of stuck in their ways, right? Like everybody's already made up their mind, and like they're just looking for confirmation, of their bias, right? And like they're willing to manipulate the data, the evidence, like the information, twist it around to fit their, to like make them. I don't know, man. It just there's something wrong about all this, like, and really, really wrong. But like it's like, is there anything in like modern ufology that is real? Anything? Like, is Roswell even real? Like, but like, is anything real? Like, what is like the Tic Tac? I don't know. Like, I mean, is that like, is that adversarial tech? Is that art? Like, can we trust anybody? Like, who can we trust, man? Like, who can we trust? It is it grifting or is not like working as a disinformation agent, for intelligence? I mean, why is it all these intelligence agents? Why aren't there any like, DOD like financial, like accountants that are coming forward talking about this? Why is it always former psychological operations officers, former intelligence? Why? I mean, it's because they know that the government will never come out and like debunk them because like you don't confirm or deny anything in government like related to sensitive intelligence, especially if it's fake, dude. It's like the government, the way they look at it, it's like, well, okay, so somebody wants to go out and lie, fine. That's great. All right. Cause like now we don't, it's like, that's like they're, and intelligence agents know that. They know that if they go out there and lie about, classified programs that don't exist, there's no way that they're ever going to be proven wrong because the government's not going to prove them wrong because they enjoy having somebody out there creating disinformation for our adversaries. Like they're not going to confirm or deny anything. And without that government official, but even if the government did say it's a conspiracy, right? Like Bob Lazar did with like his, fake education claims, like, oh, well, the government must have like erased me, right? I call it the Bob Lazar defense, where it's like anything that somebody does to debunk you, you twist it around to like support your story. Oh, well, that's more evidence, hey, you couldn't find like my background for my like master's science thesis. Well, that's just more proof that like, my story's true, because like they clearly erased, they clearly erased me from the system. It's like, it's just, fucking Ashton Forrest does it with the MH370 stuff, it's like every debunk becomes like a piece of supporting evidence. He did that shit to me, over quick terrain modeler, where it's just like, I don't know. Kevin, what's the answer, man? What's the answer?
You hit on so many things there. The one thing I'll tell you this, and there's somebody you wouldn't expect I'd be a fan of, is LL Cool J. And one of my favorite things that he wears around is a sweatshirt that says "Deaf to Ego." These guys promise you things, and they promise you they're gonna make you a star or bring you under their armpit, and they're gonna make you part of the team, and they're gonna let you in on the info, and they're gonna bring you up. And the Brits used to have a way of doing things, because they were the original intelligence agencies and everything of the world. Whenever one of their agents were going to leave or were done being of use, the only way out of being available to their intelligence agency was dying, and they would take them out. And that's why you always hear the line, "One CIA, always CIA." You don't leave the agency. You just go to another stage. So when you hear about these guys being ex disinfo agents or ex confidence guys or whatever they might have been before, they're still working for you in one way or another, or else they wouldn't be.
But also, they're not going to undo their work. Like, think of it. It's like they're not going to come out and start, like, let's say that they spent 30 years in the CIA, like crafting a narrative that the government wanted them to, disinforming. They're not going to get out and all of a sudden start telling the truth, like, and basically undo, like, the work. Like, they're not going to get out and start, I don't know, like going against like the career that they just had. What I'm saying? Like, if you spend 30 years working in like intelligence, you're not going to get out and all of a sudden be like, well, it's time to undo all the good work that I, like all the work that I did. You're not, it's just, that's like, yeah, it's just,
Yeah,
like, I just think,
unless the new thing is that's the new program, unless that's their job. If that's their job is to change the whole scenario, to make it a new program, then that's what they're going to do. But if it's not, then they're not going to do it, and they won't be allowed to do it. And we've seen it. We've seen it in any time. It's the same way in the private sector. If you're way up in the echelons and you try to go out and blow it all in the stories and stuff like that, you're going down. Okay, you're just going down.
yeah.
And
Yeah, jail time. Yeah, like they lock people up who, like I mean, like lock you up like that, or like nowadays with technology with algorithms, dude, if they want to, like if they want to fuck with you, like they just they like using AI, dude. They can send like a virus to you, dude. Like they can hack you. They can like make it to where like your search results are altered on Google. They can fuck with your phones. Like, I mean, yeah, dude, if they want you to feel the pressure, like they can absolutely, I mean, look what they did to Michael Hastings, that's one thing. Like, I don't know if you guys know who Michael Hastings is, right? You guys know that the journalist who wrote the article called The Runaway General, Michael Hastings. He's the guy where it's like the official story is that he drove his car going 130 miles an hour into a palm tree at like 3 a.m. in LA after frantically like calling around to friends and saying that he was being watched by the CIA and that he felt like somebody had fucked with his car. And he was doing a story on John Brennan, who is tied to Lou Elizondo now. And, it's like, but yeah, Michael Hastings got fucked. I believe he got murdered using DARPA remote ignition control technology, which was coming out, which was kind of like becoming public at that time, where they could remote control, like take over your vehicle. And basically that's what a lot of people speculate they did to his Mercedes. It's a weird video, by the way. That whole incident got caught by Loosh Labs. It's or Loud Labs. It's like one of those like LA independent, like news reporters, those guys that drive around with scanners and like cameras and try to get to the scene of a crime or a wreck, and take video and sell it. Yeah, that's like one of those guys actually caught like, Michael Hastings Mercedes flying by and then was like on the scene after it bursts into flames, and it was just fucking weird. Like the whole, it was weird.
And when they took out during the Obama administration, when they took out Putin's favorite limo driver, the guy went across what was it, across the median and across into oncoming traffic on that highway. He was driving a Mercedes also, and that was done via satellite. The car just drove across and went head on into that other guy. That was Obama sending a message to Putin for screwing around with the elections. That was back in 2015, and also Princess Di's driver was a Mercedes also. That
Yeah, and you think that she was killed because she was like fucking around with that, like that Saudi sheik, right? Like she was, cheating on the prince with like a Saudi Arabian
it was
sheik,
a
right? Like that was a big
Egyptian,
thing,
yeah, it
right?
was an Egyptian. But the same kind of thing. It was an embarrassment to the royal family. And that was a long and drawn out story. But yeah, the idea that that the mother of the future king was possibly going to have an heir that was Egyptian was going to be too much an embarrassment. But we go on to these things and we see how the governments work, see how the political engines work in real life. And so you see stuff like this with Lazar and Dr. Fector. I can't pronounce it to save my life. And you know,
It's cool. You're saying it, Vaughn.
you think that these things are just too far fetched, but in real life they're not. This stuff happens every day. This type of thing. These are all just co-ops, wet works, and things that go on. They've been happening for decades and more. This is just everyday thing. And the other one thing I wanted to say about the parallels here is that military operations like that you see in here like this, a lot of these operations go on the exact same way for decades. The upper echelons in the military, a lot of these guys that are up there are old, and they might have been there since World War II, and they continue the same ops over and over and over again because in their minds, if it worked one time, it's going to work again, and they just keep doing the same things the exact same way. So when you see one thing by the doctor, and then you see one thing going on like with Lazar, and they follow the same exact trail, step by step by step. That's what it seems ridiculous, but it's just the same mindset, and we see it over and over and over with the government. We see this whole pattern of disclosure, a little bit here and a little bit there. It plays out over and over and over through coming out with the whistleblowers, giving a little bit of information, like every 10 to 15 years, and then it goes back and it calms down the public, calms down all those guys that are sticking their nose in there. Then whenever it starts to build up again, they do the same thing. They come out and bring some folks out in front of the Congress, and then it brings them back down again. It's a cyclic thing. And when you see it happen over and over and over again, it might change a little bit here and there, but it's the same thing, just to calm people down. And so you look for that kind of stuff because, like I said, these guys they're not imaginative, and they just, if it worked, we'll do it again. We'll keep doing it until it doesn't work anymore. And it's really just that simple. We always look for these very elaborate plans that are, extreme things, but it's not. They're just simple things repeated. Just keep repeating them over and over and over again. And Grider, you've got so much laid out here, and people are going to have to look at this and digest it. Yeah, you got some stuff that people seriously need to start investigating on this. This is a topic that people have argued about for 40 years, almost 35 to 40 years. They've now got very hard evidence to look into, so they can stop just making up, things to talk about. They can actually look in and see how this is actually portrayed within the government. You've given them directions to look at within the government and to look at within Knapp's life and his family's life and within Bob's life and within both Bobs. Bob, I didn't even realize that, Bob and Bob. That's funny.
Yeah, just like my name doesn't need to be attached to the. Like, I'm saying like this is like I don't want to own this. Saying like it's just like if there's any further investigation, I believe the credit should go to the investigators. That make the further. I don't know what I'm saying. All right, I've I have to leave. Well, I mean, in like 20 minutes, but I want to play this Dr. Harry Fecter interview. So, it's 21 minutes, guys. This is George Knapp interviewing what I consider to be the real Bob Lazar. I'm just gonna, the real Bob. That's what I'm gonna call him. Hey, instead of Dr. Fecter, let's just call him real Bob. All right. And yeah, this is on Mystery Wire. I'm gonna play it, and then I gotta walk away because I got something I need to go do right now, and then so like if it glitches out or for some reason if the stream stops, I'm not going to be around to fix it. So I apologize in advance if that happens, but it should be fine. And then the space will end at the sometime after the conclusion. So if when I get back in, that's when I'll end the space. But I'm going to be away from the computer. So if you guys want to come up and talk, just do so. You feel free. Just yeah, I got to step away. So I'm going to start the interview. This is Dr. Harry Fecter, August 2001. And Kevin, I'm going to go on and I'm going to send you a co-host invite. That way, if anybody comes up and starts doing any crazy talking during you can shut them up. So here we go. Dr. Harry Fecter, this is in his home 2 years before he passed away. Listen, this is what a real knowledgeable, this is what somebody sounds like who knows what they're talking about. All right, this guy, this is it. This is the real Bob Lazar, in my opinion, right now. So this is George Knapp interviewing him in 2001. All right, August 2001. Here we go.
And before that, I was in midshipman school in New York on the Prairie State. And before that, I was at the University of California, where we did some physics. But everybody was very touchy at Berkeley in those days. That was 1944, 45. Because the whole thing was starting to cook. But
Meaning the bomb.
The bomb.
So when you're at MIT getting training in radar, it's still pretty new technology, still pretty important.
It was the best we had at the time, the very best. And to make it work and to be able to repair it quickly was important. But it was getting a little bit sophisticated. The big trouble was getting magnetrons, which we have in every microwave oven now for about $5. They cost $5 million in those days. They were tricky.
So how'd you end up in Wendover?
I went to work for the Boeing company in 1946, and they had Boeing was asked to develop a missile to chase aircraft, and so it was called the GAPA project. We were going to build a missile, and when I say we, I had not much to do with aerodynamics at all. That's a whole art, but these were rockets. We were going to test some configurations preliminary to what's called a ground-to-air pilotless aircraft. And the first things we did, we took 4 big boosters from Aerojet in Sacramento, hooked them to telephone poles, and just see how good the jets were. We'd shoot those up to the sun.
Out there in the middle of the desert.
Out in the middle of the desert.
Shooting up telephone poles.
Yeah. And amid all this high technology, we could look across Bonneville and see the old wagon tracks coming east and west, heading to Salt Lake that way and heading east to Nevada.
So the general project for Boeing is to build a surface-to-air missile that works.
Ground to air.
Ground to air. What's your part in it? What's your expertise?
My job was to watch over what are called telemetering stations. The missile had a little radio transmitter in it, and it would feel around itself for pressure, temperature, acceleration, pump it into the transmitter. It would come down to the station, and as it took off and flew, then we knew what was going on inside the missile. So it was old-fashioned radio, but we were pushing, we called it frequency in those days, they called it hertz. We were at 460 megahertz, and our IF strip was 30 megacycles. So we were sort of advanced in a way in trying to do what the Germans had done at Peenemünde.
Well, this is this is cutting edge stuff you're talking about at the time.
Well, it was secret anyway.
How secret?
I'm still a little touched. I'll tell you how secret it was. We shot a pretty nice shot in 1947, early 7, and it took 10 years before the picture of it appeared on Newsweek magazine. So that's the delay. So the public saw this thing and thought, boy, look what we're doing today. It was 10 years ago we did it. So it was kept pretty well secret. Meanwhile, Von Braun and the boys, Ernst Stuhlinger, out of Peenemünde, went down to White Sands, New Mexico. And there they started their rocket program because Von Braun, as you know, had done the V2 and the V1 and all that stuff. We went from this site in Wendover down to Alamogordo, New Mexico, and we then worked at Holloman Air Force Base and got serious about firing. And we also had to fuel it, so we had fueled it on. For a pint of kerosene, we could shoot it out about 6 miles, but it would take a little more for a real chase.
Here you are in Wendover. Now you got the air bases and all the stuff that had been going on there. And of course, Enola Gay had been based there, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. But you folks are separate, right? You're way up.
We were yes, we were separate from the Air Force, but we had many friends among the boys, and they assisted us by flying over us at 600 miles an hour and trying to see if we were awake.
I mean,
But we lived on the air base. That's how secret it was. And then we had a special hangar. Within the hangar were all sorts of magic German captured equipment, the IR stuff with names like Wasserfall, Peenemünde, and all kinds of documents. It's highly classified at the time.
So in other words, the stuff that had been at Peenemünde, with the German scientists,
some of the German developed, all that stuff was laying in the hangar there.
Did you get the hands-on with that stuff?
We sure did.
And
we sure did.
Fun?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we'd gotten we had the best that America knew about in the radar program. Fast circuitry, the best tubes, new sources of radiation and so forth. And so we were all pretty much electronically inspired. We loved electronics and we liked to know what's going on. And of course, we had only a secretary watching the equipment. We assured her that we were all right, so we went and looked at everything.
Very secret stuff from Germany, the most advanced stuff the Germans had.
The IR, of course, is the main foundation for the things that we do now. That is to detect, as you know, with recent IR stuff, they can watch us from out there. We're a little warmer, so they can see us. And as you know, night vision, all that stuff. And the Germans developed that as they had started to really push on the jet and things like that. Those guys were smart.
How far ahead of us were they?
I would guess about 5 years. We got Von Braun, you know, and so they more or less took over the V2, all that technology, and the V2 worked because they shot it over Britain and so forth. So that was the mission, was to develop something to kill V2s. It's like the same mission today that Mr. President Bush is interested in.
And they still haven't quite got it yet.
Well, this last thing that they did, as you know, is a little bit fixed. But we used to shoot a missile. If a colonel came to town to check on his funding people, we would, I disagreed, I objected, but we would fire a missile. It cost about $50,000 to shoot one of these. So we'd do it so the colonel was happy.
Now you're Boeing, you're civilian up there, but you're under some severe restrictions.
Yeah, we had secret.
What did they tell you about what you could do and who you could talk to and how secret you had to be about what you were doing?
Well, we were under the highest clearance at MIT, and I did not at that time have Q clearance, but I had top secret from the radar work. So I knew, instinctively. Although you have to be careful. They had classified the impedance of a 50 ohm transmission line during the war, just as a kind of catch-all. And there were often young second lieutenants that were not skilled in the art. So you had to know a little bit of the details in order to classify something. So in general, things got classified that were an abundance of classification.
But the German stuff was rightfully classified.
That was very secret.
Did you know, your group, although you stayed certainly there was camaraderie there, what you did in the daytime, your work was separate from anything else.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Were you familiar with what had gone on at the base, that Enola Gay had been there, and was that pretty much?
At that time, I didn't know about the Enola Gay. You told me about that something 20 years later. We didn't know, although we knew something big had been going on there, and you could tell by the way the boys behaved. Occasionally, I'd bring one of the pilots over. I felt very sorry for him because his wife was chasing around. I wanted his wife and him to come over and teach him morality.
When they told you you're going to Wendover and you first see this place in the middle of nowhere, what do you think? to yourself?
I was delighted. The air was so good, and I immediately felt lighter and could breathe better. In Seattle, it's very humid, so it was a pleasure to be in the desert. I always liked the desert.
Even though it's seemingly the middle of nowhere and you're cut off from the rest of the world?
Well, it had the big hotel there, and the food was good, and then the base never lost space, and the tourists would come in and out. So we quickly adjusted to the privation.
So there was like 20,000 people at some point there. Is that when you were there? About 20,000?
No, it was much reduced by the time I got there.
And the camaraderie, the men, the people that were stationed there, what was it like getting along?
There was no trouble in that respect. They were a little miffed in some way. We simply ignored it because we had the run of the base, and they were a special group. These were people that were getting essential R&R. Some were medically deposited there, and they were, as I say, boys turning, or they were men in the war. They had to be men turning into boys, and they tried hard to drink away the pain they felt, and it was, one could call them misfits or lost souls or whatever, but they were just guys that had given a lot during the war, and this was a special place, I think, in that it was a place they could go and not stick out too much.
Looking back on it, you said that there is a plaque out there somewhere that you
said we were the first. We didn't say it in German, das Erste. We said we were the first.
No, probably not good politics to do that. Looking back on it, now, what the contribution was, can you see that there was something really solid and meaningful that you did with the work out there in the middle of nowhere?
I think so, and we took that feeling with us when we went to Holloman Air Force Base in Alamogordo for various reasons. Went down there. We had a very strict competition going on between the Northrop Aircraft Corporation and Boeing, and so we felt that we owed it to everything to make the darn missiles work the way they were advertised. To get money, you have to advertise a lot, and then when it comes to doing the work, it's often very hard to keep the promises that the money people use to get the properties.
What have you been looking at where technology is now? Can you say, hey, we got X, we got this technology on its feet and got it started because of the work we did out there?
I would give the Germans credit for IR. The discoveries of the various kinds of radiation that come from pretty much all the good stuff was done by 1926, 1930 by Werner Heisenberg and Paul Adrian Maurice Dirac, who founded quantum electrodynamics and so forth. We were technical people. We were engineering. And there's much work to be done, and a good engineer is a wonder to behold. They're very important. And I think we helped get the thing rolling along.
Meaning the Germans had done the atomic research, you're saying?
Yeah, I can show you. I still have some of the Peenemünde stuff, the thermodynamics and the statistical mechanics of the interaction. Where you could talk about turbulent flows. The Germans, Prantl and Meyer, they were experts in these very complicated, impossibly complicated flows where it's waterfalls and it was not nice, smooth flow. And sonic things going supersonic and so forth, where the literature was very meager. And so we had the living Germans there from Peenemünde. Half of them went to Russia. The Russians found that Peenemünde was a rich source for their program. So half the Germans went there and half went with us.
So but at least you can, I'm just trying to figure out a way to quantify or explain what was accomplished. I don't want to exaggerate it or something, but to say that you took the German technology, figured out how we could apply it in use in other programs. Eventually, it was what you did there was incorporated into other programs and technology.
Yeah, it's like climbing a mountain until you don't really advance your knowledge of what it looks like until you get there to the top. And so there's all kinds. You fall down and you cut yourself, you ruin your leg like I did this knee recently. And we always felt we were a minor players, and I think we were. On the other hand, we were part of the walk up the mountain to the beautiful rockets that we fire today and the knowledge that's there, and served in a way to remind the Germans that Americans like free enterprise, that they could run their show in Houston, and von Braun was really something, but we also were competing with them too. And so that healthy spirit, I think, helped a bit.
You weren't married at the time, but if you had been, you couldn't have told your wife, right?
it's dangerous to tell girls anything.
Okay. And then later you got into, well, I've got that next up. Anything else you want to say about the days in Wendover and where they sit in your memories and whether you ever think about them, and if you think about them, what is it?
Well, it was amidst all the high technology. We used to go off on the weekend and find tunnels and dig up Indian arrowheads and things of that sort. And the old and the new, and there were occasional old ranch houses, so you could feel the past. In America, the past is 100 years ago, 200. We don't have much of that old stuff. In Norway, if you look at a stavkirke, for example, it's 1,000 years old. My ancestors remember 1,000 years back, the way some of my friends from Israel remember the tree that Christ leaned against, and it's to them very real.
The time period, the Nazis were conquered, the Japanese were vanquished. Were you aware of who the next enemy would be? It's 46, 47, the dawn of the Cold War, but were you aware that, this was going to be vital to use against somebody else?
Yeah. We understood that the best offense is the best defense is a good offense, whatever you call it.
Meaning what? What do you mean? Meaning offense against us?
Well, we knew that we would be up in space. I started reading H.G. Wells and Jules Verne in the 1900s, produced, but I was born in 21, and I was reading that stuff at the age of 3. So we knew all about laser beams and all the colored rays and the destruction power and everything. But when we thought about it, we were busy having fun a lot of the time, playing music and interacting with the tourists, being friends with the airmen. But one knew that eventually there would be control of what's up there.
The high ground is
space.
And you knew you were competing against them, the Russians?
Well, I never felt frightened by the Russians because communism was such, especially as exemplified in Karl Marx's writing, it couldn't work. You knew that. and it was, Marx couldn't make it simple. And when you read Bertrand Russell, you know that he saw Lenin as a rather bad character, rejoiced in murdering people. And so I liked Bertrand Russell a lot. And we understood that it's necessary to have enemies in order to bring the people together. So if your human and Christian impulse can be matched with your best economic advantage, then you have a happy combination.
Let me take another shot at it and see if we can capsulize this. It's 46, 47, beginning of the Cold War. Did you know why it was important for you to be working on that with the idea of who the next enemy was going to be at that point?
I must tell you, George, all my life, my enemy was not knowing what was going on in the world. And I was like a little Maxwell. I've told you the story of the watch. His father gave him a beautiful watch. Maxwell took it apart. His father was distressed. Why? Well, I wanted to know the particular go of it. I'd read enough history not to think that things were not going to repeat themselves. But I never thought in those terms. I'm one of the lucky people who had something so wonderful to think about. We had beginning to understand radio and Maxwell's equations. In between the simple engineering work, we were trying to calculate the wave equation and get the properties of the waveguides that we'd use to send the microwaves and so forth. I must say I was not...
So the answer is you were not thinking about it in terms of we need to get this done to beat the Russians.
No, most of us are just dumb guys. Most engineers are dumb.
We were just doing it because it was fun to work on.
Yeah, it was fun. And those who benefit from Cold Wars are still alive and well among us. But I don't deal with them. Einstein used to say, I live in that world in that solitude, which is painful in the young, but delicious in the years of maturity. I was lucky enough to have my own technical solitude. And so that my heroes were not Ulysses S. Grant, although I admire him for certain things. But my heroes were people who had done the things I like. It's always very personal.
You talk about a large population.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.